Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our first case is 154 Water Street, zoned R2. Request for a special permit in accordance with Table 1 and Section 30.2.f of the Danvers zoning bylaw to allow a new senior 55-plus in age affordable housing development consisting of 140 senior independent dwelling units, 70 of which will be deed-restricted affordable, with a preference for those residents who are deaf, deaf-blind, and near-deaf, and with an affordable income eligibility from 30% AMI to market rate. The subject applicant has been selected by the Danvers Housing Authority to be the project developer in accordance with zoning bylaw, section 30.2.f.1. The applicant is requesting variances from section 30.2.f.2 in table 2 to allow the development building to be 4 stories in height, where 2 stories is the maximum, to be 49 feet in height, where 30 feet is the maximum, and to have more than 8 units in the development building. A variance from section 30.2.f.3 is requested to allow the permanent parking spaces for the new development to be located within the dimensional side and rear setback of the property. Request made by New England Home for the Deaf, Inc. and Wind Development Company Limited Partnership, docket 23-5012.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much. My name is Nancy McKinnon. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. And listening to that legal notice that was read, we've actually come a long way since the original legal notice and the start of this hearing. We do have Chuck Crush and Steve Sacco from New England Home for the Deaf with me tonight, as well as Adam Stein and Raby Schneider from Wind Development. We also have our full development team here of consultants as well. The board has a busy night. I know you have a hearing after us, for which I think a lot of people in the audience here are for that one. So we're going to move right along to where we left off. We've actually had 2 meetings with you thus far, back in March and again in April. And at the end of our April meeting, we made very full and lengthy presentations, gave a lot of feedback at those prior meetings. And at the end of the April 10th meeting, we got some very clear direction from the board. The board certainly understood the mission of New England Home for the Deaf and the senior housing development that's being proposed on its campus, as well as the improvements that were made to that point to the design in response to the comments that we've received through our community meetings, our planning board meeting, as well as the meetings with this board. And we left that last meeting on April 10th with a clear directive from the board regarding the 2 issues that remained outstanding. And those items were the size and height of the building itself and the number of units being proposed. Since the April 10th meeting, the team from New England Home for the Deaf and our consultants have studied, in light of these comments, the needs for the senior community. We've studied the site continuously, the existing structures on the site, the structures within the neighborhood, and the proposed layout. And all of that was informing the team on how best to address the outstanding 2 issues while still presenting to this board a viable project and one that's going to be a high-quality development. We've started out with that as a core principle for this development, meeting the needs for the senior folks who are deaf, deaf-blind, or near-deaf, as well as creating a high-quality project for the town of Danvers. So on May 1st, we submitted revised plans that we think directly respond to those comments that we heard and the charge that we received at the end of our last meeting. So I'm going to jump right into what was submitted as Exhibit A, which are specifically the project revisions that we've made since our last meeting. The first item, which is very prominent for us to discuss, is the building height. As you know, this project started out as a full 4-story building. We had community meetings, and it was brought down to a 4-story and 3-story building. The 4th story now has been eliminated completely. So the building is 3 stories in its entirety. By doing that, the change in the height has resulted in the building height being reduced from 49 feet down to 37 feet. The permitted height in this zoning district is 30 feet, and so we're slightly above that, but we've come a long way in reducing the height variance requested by bringing the building down from 49 feet to 37 feet. The mansard roof that we showed you at the last meeting when we were responding to comments with regard to the design of the building still has been carried through to this new iteration, and it gives the appearance of a two-story building with a mansard roof. And so that we think has certainly responded to the comments that we heard. The building density itself has been reduced. The number of units has been reduced almost 15%. We reduced the number of units from 140 units initially proposed down to 120 units. That's almost a 15% decrease. The building footprint and the proximity to Jacob's Landing has been decreased by the removal of, you recall, the pointed section of the building. That pointed section has been decreased, which allowed us to bring the building another 21 feet further away from that lot line closest to Jacob's Landing. So the rear setback has gone from 51 feet to 72.1 feet. The building design itself, we've added even some more residential features than what you saw previously. By again keeping the mansard roof, we have dormer windows, we've added shutters, and we've added some more subtle tones. These changes have also allowed us to eliminate the need for one of the variances that had been requested. The variance for parking within the setback has been eliminated. We would not need that variance for this iteration. If we could go to the next slide, please. And this is the new proposal. This is coming in from the new curb cut. The new curb cut was discussed at the prior meetings. This is driving in from the new curb cut, and now you see the 3-story building rather than a 4-story building in the background. If we can have the next slide, please. And that shows you the change in the roof line, which is quite significant. That is the prior 4-story, and if you could go back again. Oh no, I'm sorry, that's the 3-story. That is the 4-story. In addition to these changes, Mr. Chairman, you asked at the last meeting whether we had any conditions for approval, and I did submit conditions for approval that I can review with you now. And these have been a compilation of items that we've discussed with the board. Part were presented as part of our application. Part have been agreed to through the course of the hearing process.
I believe we had 2 conditions, if I remember correctly, prior to this additional conditions. Is that right?
We have a list of conditions, which I submitted with the May 1st.
Okay.
And then we do have some additional conditions that have come up since then as a result of meeting with some neighborhood representatives.
So you're going to step through those?
Yes, I would.
Yeah, okay.
Would you like me to do that now?
Yeah, that'd be
All
great.
right. So the conditions of approval, and again, this is a compilation from what we've heard through 3 nights of hearing with you, as well as the recommendations that you received from the planning board early on.
Okay.
First condition is the project will not exceed 120 units for seniors. It's a mixture of studio, 1-bedroom, and 2-bedroom units. The housing is for 55-plus independent housing. 1 member of the household must be 55 years of age, and that is a condition that would continue in perpetuity. All units, common areas, and amenity spaces will be designed. That's all units, common areas, and amenity spaces will be designed for occupancy by deaf, deaf-blind, or near-deaf residents. First preference for housing will be for deaf, deafblind, and near-deaf residents, and that is in perpetuity. The second preference is for Danvers residents. Again, that preference continues in perpetuity. 50% of the total number of units constructed will be affordable, with not less than 13% of those with an income level of 30% or less than the area median income. Of the 50%, 25% will be affordable in perpetuity, and 25% will be affordable for a period of 40 years. 100% of the units constructed will be approved by DHCD for inclusion in the Danvers SHI, Subsidized Housing Inventory. Since we do have 50% affordable, the town gets to count all 120 units in its SHI. An emergency response plan shall be prepared in coordination with the Danvers Fire Department and emergency responders prior to the issuance of the first occupancy permit. The project engineer and design team will work to address all enumerated comments in the Danvers DPW memorandum dated March 28, 2023, with the town engineer during the normal course of permitting and construction. And as I advised the board at the last meeting, our project engineer has met with the town engineer, and there are no issues in that memorandum that will be a problem to comply with or address. The Danvers Historical Society shall be given a right of first offering on any archaeological items found on the site that are not retained by the state during its normal review process. All lighting fixtures will be cut-off fixtures, dark sky compliant. There will be no outdoor audio system. No vehicular access will be over Jacobs Ave frontage. As you know, this property does have a little tail that goes down to Jacobs Ave. There will be no access to Jacobs Ave. Following the widening of the Water Street stone wall curb cut, the stone wall itself along Water Street that will remain will be maintained as shown on the project plans. I submitted those conditions on May 1st with the revised plans. Since that time, Chuck Crush, Executive Director of New England Home for the Deaf, as well as Remy Schneider and Adam Stein from Wind Development, have met with representatives of the Jacobs Ave neighborhood. And that meeting took place towards the end of last week to show them the revised plans that had been submitted. And out of that discussion, there were some additional conditions that the neighbors had requested, and New England Home for the Deaf and Wind Development have agreed to those conditions, and I can read those for you as well. First item, as I've already said, there will be no access onto or from Jacobs Ave or Jacobs Landing. No construction vehicles will be allowed on Jacobs Ave or Jacobs Landing. No parking on Jacobs Ave, and no shortcuts through the yards. The parking lot as shown on the site plan will not be expanded, with the minor exception that if modifications to that parking area are required by the Conservation Commission or by DPW, then that would be permitted. However, in no event shall the parking lot expand further south or east under the power lines. No outdoor audio system, as I said before. The HVAC will be on the top level and will be screened for visual and sound. Revised plans have the HVAC units on the flat portion of the roof. We discussed that with you at the last hearing. We have the mansard, and then behind the mansard, the roof flattens out, and that's where the HVAC units are located, so you can't see them. And that provides both a visual screen as well as a screen and buffering for the sound. Let's see. All outside lighting will be shielded and deflected away from the neighbors. That was one of the conditions I had previously stated. Construction of the new curb cuts will be done first. So the new curb cut on Water Street will be done first, and all construction vehicles will use that new curb cut for access into the site. Item number 11 on the condition list from the neighbor representatives, pulling the building back 20 feet from Jacob's Landing. As I said earlier, that has already been accomplished in the revised plans, and the building has been pulled back, in fact, 21 feet.
So we don't need that as a condition, as it's just an updated.
Shown on the plan, correct.
Yep.
Maximize marketing efforts for a stretch goal of 100% occupancy by deaf, deafblind, or near deaf, with a target goal of 80%. Yes, we've maintained throughout the course of this hearing that the goal of this is to meet housing needs for deaf, deafblind, and near deaf residents, all seniors, of course, and that will be the marketing effort. The next item, provide quarterly meeting updates to a neighborhood representative when requested, and newsletter to neighbor who may request it. And the last item were the conditions that I specified in my May 1st submission, which I've already read to you.
So there's just to stop you there, so there's no issues with your applicant as far as any of these conditions? You guys are agreeing to all of them?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Let's go to, I think we had up slide number 3, slide number 4. This is number 8 and 9. This is the revised elevation from Jacob's Landing, showing, again, you see the 2-story with the 3rd story being the mansard roof. If you go to the next slide, that shows you the reduction in the lot line. Remember, this section had been 3 stories previously, but the higher section had been 4 stories, and that's been lowered. And this is an interesting slide that we've prepared for you that gives you a height comparison for different buildings. The one on the left is the proposed building. The one in the middle is the existing nursing home building on the campus of New England Home for the Deaf. And the building on the right is the height of 8 Jacob's Landing. So the proposed building, it certainly fits well within that visual of and comparison of the existing buildings within the neighborhood and on the campus. You had addition. This shows you the revised and moved back building. We've cut off the point. We now have a 72 feet rather than 51 feet from the side lot line on the eastern edge of the property. We are 136 feet from the dwelling on abutting property at the closest point. This is the view from this Water Street as you're headed southbound towards Salem. And if you click to the next one, and you kind of click back and forth on that, Brian, you can kind of see, I think it's helpful how we brought the building down from the 4-story down to 3 stories. And the buildings that you see in front, we've discussed a number of times, are now condominiums, but those were the historic buildings of New England Home for the Deaf, and they're 5-story buildings that have been on the property now for over 100 years. I think that's it. We'll leave that one up, Brian. So this is the revised plan responding to the board's comments with regard to building height and number of units. So in summary, we've lowered the height of the building from 4 stories to a uniform 3 stories. We've reduced the height from 49 feet down to 37 feet. We have cut off a portion of the building, making the building 21 feet further from the lot line, going from 51 feet from the lot line to 72.1, required setback being 50 feet. We're at 72.1. We have reduced the number of units by about 15%. We've gone from 140 units down to 120 units. We've added some more residential features. You can see them. You can see the shutters and the subtle colorings that we've added to this building. And as a result, we've been able to improve the landscaping. You did have a landscaping sheet, a full revised plan set was submitted to you. We've been able to eliminate the need for a variance request relative to parking within the setback, so that variance can be eliminated in its entirety. We think that this revised plan set addresses the specific items that were outstanding as of the last meeting. We're happy to respond to any questions that you have. We do have the full team here. We are again seeking a special permit. This is a permitted use. We're seeking a special permit for an affordable senior housing development on this site with a preference for deaf, deafblind, and near-deaf residents, and a secondary preference for those who are Danvers residents, again, all over 55. We are requesting the height variance, but that has been reduced significantly, and a variance for the number of units per building, given the unusual drafting of this particular section of the zoning bylaw. We have previously addressed the requirements for a special permit, as well as the requirements and hardships for the variance, which we went into great detail at the first meeting. So we think we've responded quite well to the board's requests, and we are happy to answer any questions.
Okay, well, thank you. It's a very thorough presentation, and just, again, probably for the benefit of the public and the board as well, I just want to recap. So the special permit is to allow the number of units?
No, the special permit, it's a permitted use under section 30.2.f of the zoning bylaw to allow an affordable housing for seniors in the R2 zoning district. It is permitted by special permit.
Okay, so that, and the variance is on the height?
On the height,
And we do not need the variance on the parking?
that is correct. And we need a variance on the number of units per building because of this.
Because of the 8
Yeah,
typically?
section 30.2.f has rather a strange criteria of there being only 8 units permitted per building. But again, we went through this in the first meeting with the different encumbrances on this property, as well as the residents of this property being deaf, deafblind, and near-deaf. That's a difficult layout, if not actually an impossible layout for this particular demographic. So we do need that. I will mention the density permitted under section 30.2.f is 16 units per acre. That is the permitted density. So we are not seeking a density variance because the number of units by density is 257 units would be permitted on this site at 16 units per acre. We are requesting and have reduced the number down to 120. We initially requested 140. So this is not a density variance. It is a variance for the number of units per building, a variance for the height of the building, and again, we're looking at only 7 feet, and the special permit itself.
Okay, so 3 variances down to 2?
Yep.
And a special permit.
Correct.
Okay, I think I've got it clear, at least I hope I do. And I am going to turn it over to the board, and we'll start with you, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just trying to make sense of some of my scribbles here from last time. The Thompson House has 24 apartments already,
Yes.
is that correct? And the 51 beds in the rest home and 30 beds in the skilled nursing facility, do I have that right?
I believe that's right. Correct? Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. I have no questions, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Ken Scholes.
Thank you. I think all my questions have been answered. I'll wait for comments.
Thanks, Ken. Ken J.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Karine.
I have no questions either.
Thank you. Katie?
I don't have any questions.
Thanks. I just want to walk through the density a little bit, because I think I'm a little confused. So, without this project coming before us, how many units are currently on this site?
We have 24 units in the Thompson House, that is independent living, which is actually on a separate lot, but we'll include it as part of the whole campus. And then the nursing home has 81 beds, 51 plus 30? Yeah. Yeah.
So that's considered 81 units?
Well, it's actually not. It is considered a nursing home. It's 81 beds if we want to talk about it as units for the moment, but it is something different. It was permitted differently. It's not considered independent living units. The number of independent living units is 24 at the Thompson House.
Okay. So, in the Thompson House is a separate lot, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned this overall lot is 16 acres? Or is that
16.1.
including the Thompson lot?
That does not, and where's Jesse? It excludes the Thompson House. So the Thompson House, it's part of the overall New England Home for the Deaf campus. However, the 24 units at the Thompson House is on a separate lot. The lot we're talking about at 154 Water Street is 16.1 acres, and it has a nursing home on it, and that nursing home has 81 beds.
Okay. So I guess what I'm getting to, in a roundabout way here, is by your calculation, you're saying that 216 units would be allowed at this 16 acres? With our
16,
density of 7,500 square feet per unit?
no. The density under section 30.2.f, which is the section we're dealing with, is 16 units per acre. We have 16.1 acres. That totals a permitted density of 256.
256.
Correct.
Very good. Okay, and again, you know, there's a lot to unpack, and we've done this over multiple months, so I just want to recap a little bit. We had talked about landscaping buffers, I think, with arborvitaes, and there was some strategically placed arborvitaes, I think, with both the Jacobs Aves, Jacob Landing and Jacob Ave, and those are still in place, and they haven't changed.
Absolutely. They've actually increased a little bit.
Increased, okay. And if this project were to go forward, what is the next step? Is it on to the state for financing and their
Yes.
review?
Yes, there's funding rounds. Conservation Commission, can't forget about them.
Conservation then?
We have Conservation Commission. We have a stormwater permit process through the
Town.
Danvers Department of Public Works.
Yep.
And then on to the state for the funding rounds.
And is it your feeling that if this were approved, that the allotted time under this approval action would take place without having to come before this board and look for an extension?
Yes.
Very good. I don't think I have any other questions. Any additional questions from the board? Okay, I'll go out to the public, and again, new points, please, directed towards the chair if you have any, and this is on 154 Water Street. And if you could just raise your hand, I'll call upon you, and you can come over to the mic. Yep, in the back. Hi, if you could just give us your name and your address?
Karen O'Malley, 6 Jacobs Landing.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I just want to say...
If you could just tilt that mic a little bit down. Thank you.
I just want to say that I think what they're proposing is something like the movie Field of Dreams, like the slogan being, if you build it, they will come. My husband and I are well over 55, and I don't see people coming far from their family and friends to live at the New England Home for the Deaf. I might also add that my husband is near deaf from Vietnam. I don't see this as being a true fact. Nobody wants to be away from their kids and grandkids and their friends. I just think it's a ploy, to be honest, to get it passed through. And that's my opinion. And all I would say, in also, Jacob's Landing and Jacob's Ave takes a lot of pride in their houses. People work really hard to be where they are. And the proposal, I think, is ridiculous for having it be in such close proximity to two-family houses. We could not put an addition on our second-story house. I don't understand why a business, if you will, is being allowed to do that. And I do thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you. Additional comments? Yeah, right there in the hat. Yep.
Name is Mark Nolte. I live not in Danvers, but in Beverly, 9 Spring Street. But I just wanted to say something on behalf of my parents are here. They're both deaf. They first heard about this project about a month ago, well, I don't know, right before the first meeting. And they live up in New Hampshire now, and they want to move here. They would move tomorrow if it opened tomorrow. And they have other friends in their deaf community that feel the same way. They lived in Massachusetts for most of their life, moved down to Florida and couldn't afford housing near their family. So, you know, they're from an older generation and they weren't taken care of as well as, you know, deaf people of a younger generation. So, you know, they really don't have the capacity to live closer to family in Massachusetts because the cost of living is so high. So they would be 10 minutes down the road from us, and it would be absolutely perfect. And right now they're isolated. They're not close to other members of the deaf community, and they, all they want is, you know, to be closer to their family and closer to the deaf community. So I really hope this passes because, you know, it would be wonderful for our family. And so I just wanted to comment for the deaf community and my parents.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, Gardner.
Good evening. My name is Gardner Trask. I'm here tonight in a capacity as the chairman of the Affordable Housing Trust in Danvers. And I appreciate that some people may wonder if there's a need here. There's actually 2 social needs being served by this application. One is near and dear to my heart, which is the affordable component of this. As you've heard on several occasions, not only will be 50% of the units deeded restricted, but because of the size and the way that the DHCD counts units, all 120, will be on our SHI. And relieve us of any concerns about unfriendly 40Bs coming in. It puts us above. And as you've heard from this gentleman here, and you can see we have some other residents of the deaf community with us, that need is here. And I've sat here for the past couple of sessions, and we've heard from the Home for the Deaf, we've heard from Cindy Dunn, talking about a extensive and long backlog of people who want to move into affordable housing, and especially a community of like-minded people who are deaf, near deaf, blind, or near blind, so that they can have a support system, a group of people who are like them, who think about their lives the same way they do, who you and I might live in an apartment complex. We wouldn't leave our trash in the hallway necessarily because we don't know who's going to go down and may trip. It's a social group. It's a lifestyle group that is served. I understand this woman doesn't particularly know about the backlogs, but I appreciate that that's been expressed over and over, the deep backlog. And in talking to the developer this week, it was just a little bit, put a little fine point on it. Deaf, blind, near blind, Danvers residents are number 1. Then deaf, near blind, blind residents, then Danvers residents, and then it's open to seniors. I don't think they'll ever get to that 4th strata. There's just too many people waiting, especially for the affordability part of this. So I encourage the board to pass this. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Additional yep, right here. Yep. Sorry, I don't see a hand.
Is it okay if I use this?
Sure, Sandy. I did see your hand. You were just in the wrong seat.
Well,
Oh, okay, all right. My name is Sandy Lame. I'm a town meeting member in Precinct 3, and I'm also an abutter to this property. Been on board since day one with it. I'm one of two spokespersons representing the residents of Jacobs Avenue and Jacobs Landing. Alan Fiorenti, who's here somewhere, and myself have protected the neighborhood the best that we can. We have made great headways with the Wynn Corporation, and I must admit they're a classy group. Nancy read most of my spiel. Thank you, Nancy. I wrote it this morning, too. At any rate, we've protected the neighborhood the best we can, and we have pulled, the building has come back from the landing 21 feet, which that's a good size. They've downsided the building. They've gone from 4 down to 3 levels, and they reduced the number of 140 down to 120, which is good. Could be better. When they cut 13 feet off the building height. The evolution now is 37 feet from the original 49. The goal that they gave us for their occupancy was clients that are trying to get into a facility like this, and realistically, they are looking at 70 to 80% people are going to fill this building. But they haven't even started their recruiting, marketing at this point. The parking lot got reduced, which was great. Density has been clarified. Another point, this is a negative point, that several neighbors have infringed on the property down there. The Home for the Deaf and the group over here from Wynn, they are not going to do anything about that at this time. But at a later date, they may have to take some action because this is a definite liability to them. But at least if you're on their property, you're safe for a while anyway.
And I'm sorry, Sandy, if you could just clarify your point. You're saying that there's,
some of the neighbors have kind of extended their line into somebody else's
they've kind of,
line. Yeah.
so this is like the rail trail folks?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, got it.
And one of the things I wanted to express to the people that we're representing here is that the bottom line is that the home needs the money to expand their services. The land is their asset. So if the projects do not go through, I really fear that they may have to go out to the open market. That would not be very good. And if somebody buys it, don't think that it's going to be houses, because the property is just too valuable for a house lot. A builder couldn't make any profit based on it. The other thing is the level of the building from Water Street. This is just a theoretical possibility, that the level of building from Water Street down to the Jacobs Landing technically could become a very sticky point if we get another builder in there. So I try to keep in mind for the people involved in this is that it's to keep in mind that the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. I was very much originally against this project. But all of these concessions have been made, and everything we suggested has been taken care of. So Alan and I are the only spokespersons, but we're still able to voice the ideas from the community here that's present. And we'd like to make sure that they get up, ask the questions, get an answer, so to let the board, and then let the board do their job. That's all I have to say.
And you are now in favor.
I am in favor.
I wanted to make that clear. Okay, thank you. Anyone else here on 150? Yes, right here, straight in front.
My name is Chris Farron. I'm at the 8 Jacobs Landing. I was the diagram that they said is everything's about the same height as my house. First of all, I would have to say that as far as spokespeople for the landing, the 3 houses that actually abut the property that's going to be looking right at this, I don't think are represented from the spokespeople that are here. Okay. First of all, I would have to say, 15% reduction. I hear that it went from 49 feet to 37 feet. The whole building wasn't that. So when I look out my back window, and again, as I mentioned before, my bedrooms are in the back of our house that faces it. There's no other bedrooms that have big windows like that face it. So I feel like I'm probably one of the most impacted here, first of all. I did have a question for the WIN group. As far as I hear that we've brought it from 71 feet to 50, from 50 feet to 71 feet, I think it was, 21 feet difference.
They shrunk the
building
side setback
I think they
21
said-
feet.
Yeah, I think they said from the Jacobs Landing, I think that was, right?
Yeah.
So that pulled back?
Yeah, that's correct.
So is there parking between the building and my back property line, which is Jacobs Landing there?
Yeah, you want to address that?
Can we pull up, Brian?
The question is there parking where that
Between-
setback has
between
been
that-
reduced?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand there,
Yep,
because they're gonna put the
sure.
arborvitae's in the back of the house, and my house, and
So your
house.
house will have that wall of arborvitae's we talked about?
yeah. So I'm just looking, is
can
there
that
gonna
be
be
zoomed
parking
in,
behind
Brian?
that building?
Brian, can you zoom in a little bit on that? There you go. So previously, we were requesting a variance to allow parking within the 50-foot setback. We are no longer requesting that variance, so all parking has been pulled back, so it complies with the requirement under the bylaw that parking be set back 50 feet. So, I'm going to ask Jesse.
So,
To
if-
point
Attorney
out
McKinnon,
where-
if I have it correct, though,
Yeah.
so it's 72 feet to the building,
No, to the property line.
okay, but the parking is inside that 72 feet, or there's no parking there?
This is the 50-foot setback, which we were parking within the 50-foot previously.
Okay,
And we were requesting a variance. Now, all parking is more than 50 feet away from the side setback.
okay. I think, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just interested,
Okay.
because I think this building's this room's 52 feet, so that's, a car will be right there to my back property line. So when I think about this,
Well, again, as she
It's
pointed
distance
out,
here.
though, they are meeting the requirement.
understood.
Yeah.
So the other thing.
Well, hold on, let her finish.
You had mentioned landscaping. Landscaping is located in this section, and we bolstered that up even a little bit. You do have
Okay,
a
and
full
that's to
landscape
screen
sheet.
the parking?
Correct, and that's a double row of evergreen
Okay,
plantings as required in the bylaw.
okay. Go ahead, you have
Yeah.
additional questions?
No, it was just, it's more of that, I don't think the whole building was four stories.
That's
So when I
right, it
see
was
the
not.
rendering- When I see the rendering here, there's also there's a headroom here, so they're sitting up above our properties by about 20 feet, right? That's about the height of my hill behind my house. So then you give the other distance, and they're looking right down at our properties on 6, 8, and 10 Jacobs Landing. So I just feel like it's still too big, too tall. 15% reduction, I don't think is really a reduction that we'd expect to see.
Okay, so not in favor?
I am not in favor, and I would think, the Malleys gave their statement earlier on, and they're sitting right beside us as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Additional comments from the public? Yep, in the back. Well, either one.
Both had their hand up.
Yeah, my name's Alan Fiorenti, 18 Jacobs Avenue, co-spokesman for Jacobs Avenue, along with Sandy. We met with Wynn and New England Home for the Deaf. We continue to meet with them. We met with them last Thursday at 1. We've asked for concessions and agreements and to be put in writing, and they did that and they're going to put it in writing. In addition to the conditions that Sandy mentioned, I think Attorney McCann mentioned them. We asked for the no traffic, no construction on Jacobs Avenue or North Shore coming down that way. The lighting, they agreed to back shield, no outside audio, HVAC, sound system, and no parking on Jacobs Avenue or Jacobs Landing. The building is now 3 stories, went down from 4. We looked at the structure. I got a copy of the latest drawings, and the building's much more pleasing than the original, which was a warehouse looking building. The first and second floor are softer colors, and they sort of match what the nursing home is, and the third floor is a nice roof with dormer-style things in it. Met with Chuck Rush last Thursday. He's the CEO and executive director of the New England Home for the Deaf. He is here today. He's agreed to maximize the building occupancy for the deaf, blind, and near-deaf blind to the greatest extent possible. He's also agreed to meet with a representative every quarter from the Danvers Jacobs Avenue resident, one representative, to quarterly, so he can go over the status of this effort they're doing and the construction status of the project. And he also agreed to send newsletters out to anybody in all the abutters if they so wanted the newsletters. So Sandy and I spoke to all, and I emphasize all the interested neighbors on Jacobs Avenue. And they are all in agreement with the latest proposal from Wynn and New England Home for the Deaf.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to the gentleman there, yep.
My name is Bernie Mazar, and I live on 27 North Shore Ave, not Jacobs Ave, okay?
Yep.
This is another street over here, okay? And I think, again, also, I don't agree with this project, and I think the building is too big as it is. But my question is, and nobody ever addresses this, is traffic. And I know the last time I was here, someone on the board said, well, traffic is traffic. Well, that's good if you don't have to deal with it, okay? Now, they're gonna build, there's 2 roads coming out of that facility right now, and they're gonna put a 3rd one, okay? And that 3rd one, I don't know whether you could come out onto that road and make a left, because you've got traffic coming from Bishop Fenwick down that road, okay? And if you're gonna make a left, you're gonna hold up the traffic coming down there. So I don't know why nobody talks about the traffic, because they're not gonna deal with it. But us people on North Shore Ave are going to have to deal with this traffic, especially at October, when the whole world is going to Salem, okay? And then you've got the winter coming, and that's gonna be a nightmare. That's not a very big road right there. I know they got plans and they got designs and they got all kinds of arrows and this and that. But I think that the traffic for us is gonna be, not for you folks, okay? But it's gonna be a problem for the people on North Shore Ave, okay? And that's all I wanna say. But I don't agree with this project. I think the building's too big, and I think the traffic is gonna be a problem for us. And after it's all said and done, what do I get to say when it does turn out to be a problem?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I just mention, we did submit a full traffic report as part of the application that was reviewed both by the planning board as well as this board. We made a traffic presentation. We've reviewed the traffic and curb cuts and turning movements and the turning lanes and all of that with the town engineer as well. So I just wanted to make sure the board was aware of that, which I think you are.
I am, thank you. With the hat, yeah.
I'm Tony Lee from 10th Jacob Landing. I agree with Chris. I think the story's too big. The house, project is too big, and we don't, not in favor of it. Yeah, that's it. So
Okay.
I'm not in favor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? New comments? Yep, purple shirt.
My name is Bill McKinnon Jr., and I live at 5 Jacobs Landing.
Bill, if you could just bring that mic up a little bit.
Okay. I'm on the opposite side of the street of my neighbors who have just spoken, so I'm not impacted quite the way they are. I feel more so for them. Chris just pointed out that there's a rise behind his property, so
Sure.
the elevations have to be adjusted for that. I'm wondering if the new buildings that they propose are being kept forward, meaning towards the Water Street side of the property as much as they can, rather than building on the peak of that hill. If you come forward towards Water Street, the elevation's dropping, and this is what you get. Is the project back, is to the front, to the Water Street?
Well, let me, Attorney McCann, maybe one of the engineers can address that.
Sorry. Jesse Johnson, Weston Sampson Engineers. We're the civil engineering consultant on this project.
So I
we
think
did
the
look-
question, if I can just paraphrase, it sounds like the neighbor wants to understand, is it, I guess, brought forward or as close to Thompson House as it can be?
It is, in fact. There are a number of restrictions I believe we've gone over with you as far as site constraints, and one of the big ones is the existing facility and its current access around the back of the building, and what we need to provide for a turning movement for the fire truck in the front of our building. So we had restrictions from that building the existing building we came off with the current drive. We pushed the current drive as close to the existing building as we really could, and then we started going back from there, and that really drove where that building could start and as close as we possibly could get to the existing building. But one thing we did do is we did shave that hill down considerably to try to bring that grade down as much as we possibly could as well to start up with it. And one of the things that wasn't mentioned is, yes, we did reduce the overall height of the structure by 12 feet, but now by just a current elevation, if you're anywhere around the perimeter of the site, and let's say you're looking at the existing NEHD building, that's around elevation 74, true elevation 74. Our building is going to be at a true elevation just under 62. So we're going to be 12 feet under the elevation, and again, that's under what is existing on that site. So it doesn't go out of character. Yes, we're 71 feet from our property line, but we're still in character with that neighborhood and with that building on the site.
Thank you. Yeah,
But
additional questions?
Yeah, yes, please. You're discussing the density
Yep.
and the number of units. Are they allowing for future construction?
Not without coming before this board.
But there
So
is-
no,
but there-
the
there-
answer is no. What they're asking for right now is what's on the table.
Okay.
And any changes to that would require additional agenda
Mhm.
requests.
I think we can appreciate the concessions that Wynn has made, but I would say that I would still suggest that they try to maintain 2 stories, and I'm opposed to the additional height.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else on 154 Water Street? If not, I'm going to close the public hearing. Yeah, Mr. Bradstreet.
Bill Bradstreet, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. A comment was made about traffic and a traffic study being made. Did the traffic study include the additional traffic by the charter school that's going to be put up on South Liberty and Pulaski Street? And was when the traffic
Yeah,
study
we're
was-
definitely aware of that. I know that question was asked by myself.
All right, and the
But
other thing
they can revisit it, if you'd like. Attorney McCann?
was
The answer is yes, Mr. Bradstreet.
Okay, so we're extrapolating or guessing what the
Yeah.
future traffic would be
Exactly.
as opposed to what
And it is a
it
guess.
now?
It's a guess. I mean, there's no, to me, there's no exact science here. Traffic, you know, in New England and Boston and Danvers, it's all, I think lots of great efforts are put on trying to understand traffic, but I don't know about you. I've been commuting, 40-plus years. I can't figure it out. I leave the same time every day, and it's a disaster one day, and it's great the next. So
I don't commute. I think the traffic is bad as it is.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I would hate to think that in the future, as much as we guess now, if something turns sour, there's no turning back. We will be stuck with what we are looking at right now. Am I in favor of it? I don't live there. Am I in favor of it? No.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, at this point, I am going to close.
If I could
Yeah,
just
go ahead.
summarize, thank you. This project did in fact start out as a full 4-story building all the way across. We had some meetings with the neighbors prior to our first hearing before you, and we dropped the building down to a 4-story and a 3-story. And now we've further, in response to your comments and neighborhood comments, we're looking at a 3-story building with a lot of different concessions through this whole process. And that's what the public hearing is about, right? We get input from, in this case, we had input from the planning board because of this unique process that we have here before we even came before you. And we've received your comments as well as neighborhood comments and general public comments. And we think we are now at a project that is well designed and fits in well with the campus as well as with the neighborhood. You saw the different heights of the buildings, and Jesse just spoke to that as well, that this is a project that will meet the needs of the senior community, of the affordable housing market that we're trying to meet, but most importantly for the deaf, deafblind, and near-deaf community. The project that we have presented to you with these revised plans, we didn't come back at the last meeting. We took 2 meetings off essentially and spent an entire month looking at what we could do, taking into consideration the site, the environs around the site, the mission, and the economics of it to make this a financially viable project. Because the last thing this board wants, and I would think the last thing the neighborhood would want, would be a project that's not financially viable. And this is, but this, we've dropped the unit count down 15% down to 120 units, and this is the best design that we can bring you, and we think that it is responsive to the comments that we've heard. It is responsive to our charge that you gave us on April 10th. And we've done a lot of work with the neighborhood, and we're confident that this will be a project that they will be proud of, that the town will be proud of, that New England Home for the Deaf, who's been here longer than anybody in this room, I think, 100 years or so, that they will be proud of too, and they can continue their mission of providing housing for this unique demographic. So again, we thank you very much for your consideration, and we're looking forward to any comments that you have.
Thank you. And just before we deliberate, I just want to recheck with the board that there's not additional questions of the applicant. Everybody's good? No additional questions. Okay. With that said, we will go ahead and deliberate. And Jeff, I will start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think everybody on the board here appreciates all the work that's been done. Incorporating the comments, coming up with a better design. I think it's a great project. We certainly need the affordable housing stock. We certainly have a need for this development. But I'm a no, and I'd like to spend a minute explaining why. At a town meeting in June of 1980, they voted to change this district from Residence 1 to Residence 2. And the meeting minutes of that meeting make it pretty clear why they did that, because multifamily large development is not allowed in Res 2, and it is allowed in Res 1. So what town meeting was trying to do was prevent large multifamily development in this district. And I don't think that an appointed 5-person board who is not responsible to the electorate of Danvers should overturn that decision and go from an allowable 8-unit building to a 120-unit building. I think it's a great project. I think it should go through, but I think town meeting has to approve it and not this board. So I'm a no.
Thank you, Jeff. Ken?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll see if I can hit on all these points I have. I also think this site is a good spot for this building. I appreciate everything that you guys did and lowering the height, and I even like the bed layout, the bedroom layout you did. Nobody ever does that. That was great. As far as traffic, as a board, all we can do is ask for a traffic study. We're not traffic experts. If they come back and say that it's viable in this area, who are we to dispute it? Well, how do we know? We don't know. And also, to the gentleman in the back, did you know they're taking the island out of the road?
Yeah, I know that. My concern.
All right, that's all. Public comments closed.
I think that's going to alleviate a lot of the traffic issue there. Anyways. And then I also appreciate the gentleman from Beverly's story. Here I'm thinking, where are these people going to come from that are going to live there? Here's a story. That hit home with me. I'm a yes for this project.
Thank you, Ken. Ken J.
I think it's a great project for people's in need, and it's a value add for the town with the affordable housing component. So I'm a yes on this.
Thank you, Ken. And Kareen?
I agree that I think this is a great project. I am concerned about the height. If there is some way that this could be reduced to 2 stories, maybe even 100 units instead of 120, I would be a yes. But at the 3 stories, I am not. Thank you.
Thank you, Kareen. And Katie?
I've been in favor of this project since we first heard about it, so I'd be a yes.
Thank you, Katie. Attorney McKeon, I can appreciate the work that goes into putting something together like this. I also commend the applicant for the work that's also happened with the neighbors. I think the project's, obviously reduced in size. I think you've taken, I've been on this board, I don't even know how long anymore, but to see this amount of conditions put with this project, it's almost unprecedented to me, because I've read a lot of older decisions, and I've never seen so many conditions tacked on to a project. I think you did a lot of work to consider with the landscaping, the height reduction, the unit reduction, and I agree with my fellow members as far as the need for the town. It's clear that the Housing Trust is pushing for it. I think the planning department's happy with it. So for those reasons, I am a yes. However, you do not have the votes as a supermajority is required. So I'm not sure what you'd like to do.
I would like to ask if we could show it's slide 25, please. This is what I'll call the by right plan. This is what 8 units with 8 units in a building 2-story would look like, as opposed to what we are showing you for a building with walking trails and landscaping. That's the layout for 120, I think, or 140. That was our original. Let's go back to that one, Brian, if you could. There. That's what it looks like when you do 2 stories. Is that really what town meeting was looking for? Is that kind of site disturbance? We think, number one, for our demographic, deaf, blind, near-deaf folks, 2-story units, townhouse style or condos 2-story, doesn't work for them. It doesn't work for the services. A layout like this with cars going all over the place and pedestrians having to go all over the place, it doesn't work for that population that has challenges with hearing and sight. We talked about that when we talked about the circulation, and that was the initial point where we started to develop this site. Was New England Home for the Deaf said, we have to have separate circulation. We have to have separation between pedestrians and vehicles. And this type of a layout doesn't work for the New England Home for the Deaf residents. And it also doesn't work for affordable housing, where if these are 2 stories, for deaf and deaf-blind folks, you're looking at putting an elevator in each of the units. You're not going to be able to do that for an affordable housing development. This entire section, 30.2.f, had a lot of different components in it, but the point of it was affordable housing for seniors. That was and it was through Danvers Housing Authority or a developer who was selected by the Danvers Housing Authority, and that's what we have here. New England Home for the Deaf Wind Development was selected by the Danvers Housing Authority to develop this project. So that was the point for town meeting, and then they added in different criteria, most of which we have met. We certainly haven't maxed out the density of 16 units an acre that town meeting said was acceptable for this site. We have 256 units here. We're proposing 120. And that type of a layout with that type of an impact, is that really better? Is that really what town meeting was looking for, as opposed to what we are proposing? If you can put up, please, number 11, which is this with open space, with a central building, with a courtyard area in the middle, a building that meets the needs of this demographic, that can provide the services for this demographic. And do we need a variance? Yes, we do. If we didn't need a variance, we wouldn't be here. But if there weren't cases where variances are appropriate, you wouldn't be here, right?
Correct.
I
That's
mean, you
correct.
have the authority that was given to you by town meeting and by state statute to issue dimensional variances. And that's what we're requesting, and I think the request is minimal. We're asking for a 7-foot variance on the height. So you add into this the everything else that went into the variance argument that we went over in the first night with the encumbrances on the site. But really, we're meeting the goal of what town meeting was looking for in section 30.2.f of affordable housing development for seniors. And then we're adding on to it this campus setting, which when we went on our site view, Mr. Sauer, you didn't attend this, you weren't able to attend the site view. I think you went out separately. It's a big site. 16 acres is a big site. And we were able to site this building and the parking in a way that works for a very unique demographic, and it meets a need in the town. And I would ask that you consider, those who are not in favor of the project, that you consider the entirety of section 30.2.7 and the goal of it, and the fact that we are looking for a 7-foot height variance to allow this and to make this happen. And we have downsized the building, we have downsized the number of units, and we are still coming up with a project that is viable and that's attractive and that's safe for deaf and deaf-blind folks who are making their way around this site every day. So I would ask you to consider that, please.
Yeah, I mean, I can see the value in that, and again, that's why I voted for it, because I do think this is serving a unique community. Otherwise, I would probably agree with the dissenting votes. But with that said, I will come back to Jeff and Corinne, and understanding that other slide, does that sway you at all?
Again, I still think we can get down to 2 stories, even if they're not situated as they were on that second slide. I still think we can pare it back a little bit to lessen the impact on the neighborhood while still allowing for housing for this community.
And Jeff?
Mr. Chairman, I agree that this design looks better than the by right plan, but it's still really big. It's still really big.
And I agree, it's big. I just, again, I only speak for myself. I obviously don't speak for all of us, but I think elevation-wise, landscaping buffer-wise, parking-wise, the fact that this is a sunken site in a way is all the things that I guess sway me that the impact on the neighborhood is minimal. If this was in R1, I guess this would be a whole different ballgame, right? So,
And
again,
we can't get this down to
Yeah.
2 stories. We can't.
yeah.
And unfortunately, this 16 acres, something's going to happen here to support the mission of New England Home for the Deaf, and we very much hope that it's this. But we cannot get it down to 2 stories. It doesn't work for this demographic. And we have to further the mission. We have to meet the whole point of this, which is providing housing for deaf and deafblind and near-deaf folks. We cannot pare it down more. And I'd ask you to consider that, please.
Thank you. Well, we're at a crossroad here. I do think it's a good project, but I only speak for myself, so. Jeff, any additional thoughts?
I still think.
And I think maybe the point I can add is, I understand your point about town meeting and why this bylaw exists, but again, I think the slide is compelling. I know, I would assume, even if lower height buildings, if it were the layout, the second layout that Attorney McKinnon showed us, I don't think I'd want to see that.
No, I wouldn't want to see that either.
Yeah.
And I don't think the neighbors would.
No, and I do think this is given the concession, and again, I've spoke my piece, so, Attorney McCann is asking, we need 1 vote. If it's not there, then we're gonna have to ask Attorney McCann to make a decision, so.
I'll give her the vote.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Attorney McCann, it does look like you have the votes now.
Thank you.
And, if I could get a motion, please. And Attorney McCann, just for clarification, we will read in all these conditions as part of our decision, correct?
It's certainly fine with me if you wish to do
Okay.
that. We've agreed to those
minute, I
conditions.
have to
Your
read all those
director
in.
can give you
Yeah.
guidance on that.
I mean, Ken's gonna read all those in, not me. Okay, if I could get a motion, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I make a motion to grant the special permit from Section 30.2.F, Section 2.12.C, and Mass General Law 40A, Section 9, Table 1, to allow the construction of senior affordable housing units consisting of 120 independent dwelling units for seniors over 55 years of age, with a preference for deaf, deafblind, or near-deaf residents. Are we voting now or going with the next motion?
There's a couple of motions.
Right.
Yeah, let's go.
We're going to vote after each motion?
Yeah, you can
Okay.
vote, so that was
Okay,
the
I've
one
got
motion.
a motion, could I get a second? I need a second, board.
Oh, second.
I've got a motion and a second, all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Second motion?
We make a motion to grant the waiver from providing an evergreen screen along the property line to a 50-foot setback from the front setback due to the pre-existing condition along Water Street and Jacob Ave frontages that make screening impractical. The municipal water and sewer systems shall not become overloaded by the proposed use. The public streets shall not be overloaded by the proposed use. The value of other land and building will not be depreciated by the proposed use. The specific site is an appropriate location for the use or structures. The use developed will not adversely affect the neighborhood. There will not be an undue nuisance or serious hazard of vehicles or pedestrians, and adequate and appropriate facilities will be provided to ensure the proper operation of the proposed use, structure, and condition. The proposed use or structure will be in harmony with the general purpose of this bylaw. Project to not exceed 120 units for seniors, studio, one-bedroom and two-bedroom. 55-plus independent housing. One member of the household must be 55-plus years of age in perpetuity. All units, common areas, and amenity spaces will be designed for occupancy by deaf, deaf-blind, or near-deaf residents. First preference, deaf, near-deaf, deaf-blind, or near-deaf residents in perpetuity. Second preference, Danvers residents in perpetuity. 50% of the total number of units constructed shall be affordable, with not less than 13% for those with income level of 30% or less of the AMI. 20% of the total number of units constructed shall be affordable in perpetuity. 25% of the total number of units constructed shall be affordable for a 40-year term. 100% of the units constructed shall be approved by DHCD for inclusion of the Danvers SHI. An emergency response plan shall be prepared in coordination with the Danvers Fire Department and emergency responders prior to the issuance of the first occupancy permit. The project engineer and design team will address all enumerated comments in the Danvers DPW memorandum dated March 28, 2023, with the town engineer during the normal course of permitting and construction. Danvers Historical Society shall be given a right for first offering any archaeological items found on site and not retained by the state during its site review process. All lighting fixtures shall be cut-off fixtures, dark sky compliant. No outdoor audio systems. No vehicular access over Jacob Ave frontage. Following the widening of the Water Street stone wall curb cut, the stone wall along the Water Street will maintain as shown on the project plans.
Did that capture all of them before I second that?
That captured all of the conditions on the conditions of approval that I gave you, and I'm just looking to see if there were other conditions requested by the neighbors that we agreed to. You want to go to that?
Attorney McCann?
Yes.
So yes, that's in a separate document that's next. So, yeah, it's there, but it's in.
Some of these are hit on
Some of
that.
them are duplicates.
Some of them are the same, but some of them are different.
And I'll read those conditions. There will be no access onto or from Jacob Ave or Jacob's Landing. No construction vehicles on Jacob's Ave or Jacob's Landing. No parking on Jacob's Ave, no shortcuts through yards. Parking lot as shown on the site plan will not be expanded, with the exception of minor modifications that may be required by the Conservation Commission or the DPW, but in no event shall the parking lot expand further south or east under the power lines. No outdoor audio systems. HVAC will be on the top level and will be screened for visuality and sound. Revised plans have HVAC units on the flat portion of the roof.
You can skip the next one.
All outside lighting will be shielded and deflected away from the neighbors. Construction of the new curb cuts will be done first, and all construction vehicles will use the new curb cuts for access to the site. Pull back building 20 feet from Jacob's Landing. Maximize marketing efforts for a stretch goal of 100% occupancy of deaf, blind, and near-deaf blind with target goal of 80%. Provide quarterly meeting updates to a neighbor representative when requested, and newsletter to neighbor who requested it.
Could you please remove condition number 11, pull back building 20 feet, because it was
Yeah,
already
that's
done?
part of-
yeah, sorry.
Yes, that's part of the site plan.
I think
Okay,
that's-
I've got a motion with, I think, well over 25 conditions that you're accepting to. Could I get a
That's
second,
right.
please?
I second.
And you're good, Attorney McKinnon. We've captured them all. I've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
And then we have a last motion on variance.
I make a motion to grant the variance from section 30.2.f.2 and 3 and section 2.12.b to, 1, allow the senior independent dwelling unit building to be 3 stories rather than 2 stories. 2, allow the construction of 1 building for senior independent dwelling units with greater than 8 units per building, 120 units total. Allow permanent parking spaces to be located within the required side and rear setbacks.
You-
Chair.
Number 3's not.
Yep, I was going to say the 3 should be eliminated.
Yeah, we'll eliminate number 3 because that was revised and no longer a variance that's required.
Okay.
So we have a 2-part variance there, 1 and
Nope.
2.
Oh, yeah, 2 items. Yes.
2 items on 1 variance, sorry.
Right.
I have a motion. Can I get a second, please?
I second.
And any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
You've got it.
Okay.
Thank you
Good luck. I
very
hope it
much.
works out well, and
May I
thank you
ask
for the
a
efforts,
question of,
both the neighbors as well.
may I ask a question of the planning director? Was there any need to have, I assume the special permit that was granted at the beginning, that was the first motion, was for the special permit itself, and that includes the plan approval that is in the discretion of this board, or would you like a separate vote on that?
I don't think it's necessary, but it wouldn't hurt if you feel
Let's
more
do
comfortable.
a separate vote, if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Chairman,
To accept the plan as submitted.
to approve the plan as submitted, correct?
Can I get a motion for that?
So moved.
And seconded.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And on behalf of New England Home for the Deaf and Wind Development, we want to thank the board for the consideration that you've given to this plan and all the time. And I'm sure you'll be proud of this when it's completed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to take a 5-minute recess. Our next case.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our next case is 43-45 Dayton Street, Highway Corridor Zone. Request for a finding under 3.10.C.1 of the Danvers Zoning Bylaw to substitute the current non-conforming residential use of two single-family homes on two lots to a single lot with a 4-story, 32-unit multifamily building. Request made by Jill Elmstrom Mann, docket 23-5018.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. Jill Mann here on behalf of the applicant. I took the opportunity to actually create a PowerPoint presentation. I thought maybe it'd be a little simpler to run through it versus trying with the plans, given the size of the audience. So obviously, this is just an informational page. If you wouldn't mind, Brian, to go to the second page. I just wanted to give you an overview of what the property is. So we're in the HCZ district. The total, the total area is 36,000 square feet. We have two individual single-family home lots that are 18,000. So the proposal is to combine them and therefore to reduce the nonconformity, which is one of the elements for the substitution. So basically reducing a detriment and reducing a nonconformity by combining the lots. So that's one of the aspects. We do have sufficient frontage in the highway corridor zone. We did reduce the number of units, and I'm going to go through the economic aspects of why this was all we could do, and I can explain it as we get further through. But we did eliminate 2 units and then created additional space for community space on the first floor in an attempt to address the concerns of the abutters, an attempt to address the concerns of this board. The building footprint, just for informational purposes, is about 8,500 square feet. Parking spaces, as we said before, we have 54, 21 in, 33 out. The setbacks, it's important to note that the front setback is compliant, but our side setbacks are close to twice what is necessary in this present zone. So if you can go to the next slide for me, Brian, I appreciate it. So here are just the revisions that we had done, hearing everybody's concerns. We reduced from 32 to 30 units. We eliminated 1 2-bedroom. We eliminated 1 studio, and we created a gym and gathering area for residents. We did relocate that dumpster to the far end. Remember how abutters had asked us to do that, and we did. We did identify and make the opportunity to save trees on the project. So if you can flip to that next site. There's the couple of trees. You had asked for that at the last hearing. You know, where are the big trees? What are we saving? What's the ability? So those 2 trees are on the property that we actually are going to save. And then there are some trees on an adjacent property that we will not be touching, and they're other people's trees. So they're in that area. But you can see that there are trees well within the boundary of the property that will be coming down in order to accommodate the driveway. I will note that this particular district is, unlike maybe some discussions you've had previously this night, it is a 55-foot tall zoning district, so all buildings can be 55 feet. You can have buildings in this particular district that are numerous stories. We are proposing a 4-story building that is about 48 feet tall. This particular building in the initial iteration actually was closer to 55 feet, and I'm going to show you a picture of that in just a moment. But I will say that when we initially met with the abutters, we immediately changed the height of the building and dropped it. And that was done through a couple of architectural style changes. We went to a mansard roof, quite honestly, and then we actually took out area in between all of the floors. So if you could flip, so this is actually, I would actually like to go back to that page. So you can see where we are trying to put up landscaping on both sides of the properties, and then we have landscaping in the front. We do have a sidewalk in front of this particular building, and I know there was a lot of concern. Okay, you're going to put sidewalks on the street, and do people need the sidewalks? We do have a sidewalk that literally loops the property, so a resident can go out and kind of walk around the whole property and then have frontage in front to walk. There really aren't opportunities to extend the sidewalk in this area, and I think the town's well aware of that because of grade changes and other aspects with regard to this particular layout. But we did, as I said, you can see we revised the dumpster. Just the zoning and parking table, I just put it up to support what we had said previously relative to that. And then the next page, if you would. So here's the architectural plans that we are proposing. So you can see the mansard roof, and you can see where we have the height limitations. I mean, we tried to do the best we could. So the reason we can't take off the top roof is because it's a residential structure, and there are so many financial pressures with a residential structure that creates an issue for completely eliminating a story, because what that does is it actually changes the financial dynamic and makes it almost impossible, if not impossible, to finance. With a residential structure, you have the issues relative to accessibility. It has to be accessible. It has to have 2 staircases. It has to have a handicapped elevator, obviously. It has to have ramps. It has to have space in order to accommodate accessibility for all persons. The project as a residential building also has certain building code requirements that aren't attendant to it in an industrial site or a commercial site that would allow you to kind of chop something off. In addition to that, with the residential building, you obviously have different dynamics during the operation of the project. So residential structures always have issues relative to vacancy and default that aren't attendant to commercial structures, which is the only other alternative with regard to this particular site. So I'm going to actually ask you to flip to the next slide, because this is the one that we had originally proposed and shown to the abutters. As I said, it was about a 55-foot tall building, but when we were looking at it, we knew that we really needed to bring down the scope, so that's why we took that entire roof line off and dropped it into a mansard, which really made a tremendous height difference. When we go to the next slide, again, this is the footprint of the building that we would be allowed to put in because it's a permitted use, which is an indoor storage facility. The options for this site in order to make it financially viable are very limited. We do want to try and keep the residential nature and residential character, but the project cannot support chopping off a story. It just cannot. So the option would be to put in a tall structure that is actually a commercial structure that would be for self-storage. Is it a desired opportunity, and is it our desired plan? It is not. So I'm going to ask you to go, and it's a 10,125 square foot footprint. The reason why it's so much larger is because you don't have those parking requirements you have with a residential structure. That's basically why. If you can go to the next slide too, Brian. So we had discussed very briefly traffic impacts, and I know the neighbors, and I appreciate it, the neighbors don't want to see this particular property changed, right? It's two single-family homes. And they said there's going to be a tremendous traffic impact. And I understand that people are always afraid of the change, but there is not a tremendous traffic impact. And the reason why I put up this particular screen and this particular page from the traffic report is to basically demonstrate that to you. So what we always do, right, is we assess during peak hour, because you as a board want to know what's the worst case scenario for traffic. You don't want to know what happens all day long. I mean, maybe you do. It's 146 trips, literally all day, right? So over a 24-hour period, it's 146 trips is what something like this generates. But what is really important, what is really impactful, is what's the worst case scenario in 1 hour during peak. So what I showed you is there are 493 unrelated car trips, and by that I mean something not generated by this site. We literally will generate during that peak 12 trips. That means you have maybe 1 car per 5 minutes, and that's the max. That is what would be possible, 1 per 5 minutes during peak, and then during the rest of the time, it will be far less. Maybe it's 1 per 10 minutes, and that's only on average, and it could be sometimes you go an hour with no trips, and that's consistent throughout. So peak AM, peak PM, and peak on Saturday. That really is your impact. It is a minor impact. This just doesn't generate that type of volume. A single-family home generates like 9.5 trips a day. This type of a development generates about 4.5. For each unit. And I know it's more trips than a single-family home. I recognize that, but it's a different type of trip. Number one. Number two, the ITE stats and all the stats you have in ASHTO don't take into account this recent dynamic of work at home and stay at home, and it just doesn't. So with this particular type of project, where we really are anticipating absolutely no children, we're not anticipating children. I know everybody, I don't know why they laugh, but we really don't anticipate children in this type of a development. There are very few amenities for them, and it isn't welcoming for them. So you don't have that dynamic of kids going to school, parents picking up, going to soccer, going to football, going to baseball. You just don't have it. So if I may, Brian, can you go to the next page for me?
Attorney Mann, can you hold on a second? Folks, could you please hold your chatter and conversation? It's the last time I'm going to say it. It's a public hearing, we're trying to conduct business, so please allow the applicant to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. So in general, again, what this board's job is to assess, is there going to be an increase that's going to exacerbate a traffic problem? Is there going to be an impact? Is it going to harm the neighbors? It absolutely is not. We actually are even redesigning how the driveways empty. So presently you have one of the driveways that goes right into Armory, and it's offset directly across from Armory. We actually separated the driveways so that they don't do that, so that you don't have that street approach right into the project. We made the driveways one way all the way around, and again, to minimize any kind of conflict and to make it more expected. So you always know this is the in, this is the out. It's never, oh my God, is somebody coming, is somebody going? That doesn't happen on this particular site intentionally. And basically, I just wanted to point out again, the residential use generates literally a maximum of 12 trips over a 60-minute period at peak. And that means that it's one trip every 5 minutes at the maximum amount of traffic generated by this site. If you can go to the next one, please. Thank you. So another concern, and it's always exceptionally important to assess the stormwater management impacts, because anybody who has ever been a neighbor to a subdivision back before stormwater control was put in place, we all know what happens. Just flow. Or back before local stormwater guidelines took place and people did A&R plans, nobody did stormwater control, you had free-flowing water. So now we have in-place stormwater control. These two lots had no stormwater control over it. They had no utilities, no management facilities, no manner in which to collect. This site will comply with all requirements. And in addition to that, because it's subject to Mass DOT, because it's on the Mass Highway layout, Mass Highway looks at what we do with our drainage, because we're never allowed to have any water, as Chris is going to tell you, Chris from Williams Bradgers, going into the layout. They want to avoid that type of flow. So you're going to have a review by your own DPW, and then you're going to have a review by MassDOT. So I just wanted to point out the existing homes have no system for storm maintenance. The soils, as had been pointed out at the last meeting, are wonderful for actually allowing high infiltration rates, which is great. The amount of pavement has been minimized on this particular site because we were able to do an in and an out, and because we have underground parking. So we actually took any kind of impervious area and made it clean runoff. So as you know, anything that runs from a building doesn't have to be treated, but pavement does. So by putting a lot of the parking under, we eliminated a lot of that, if you will, for lack of a better term, dirty runoff, right, Chris? In addition to that, we did maintain the open space required. We have 30% open space, which is the requirement for this particular district. Maybe the next one? So comments. So the proposed development is most certainly in harmony with this neighborhood. So I get that all of a sudden you go from 2 single-family homes, because a lot of the board members said, you know, to the whole team, look, that's too big a project for that area. You just, it's too big. But I want you to see what Tim looks out of his house when he's watching TV every night. So I don't know if you can see it, if you can maybe zoom in, but the project where you can see the red and white, or red and blue, right there, that's what he looks out at. And that's where you have the Best Western with 140 guest rooms. So that's a stone's throw. And that's his view from his living room. And now if you go over to the next, this is his view out of his bedroom windows. It actually looks at the 255-unit project behind it. And both of those units and both of those uses are permitted. They weren't, extraordinary uses. It's because you're in the HCZ zone. And the HCZ allows the 55-foot, they allow high density, and this is what you get. This is not a single-family home zone, nor does it really support a single-family home type of use. So I would say that, this truly, while I understand it's a big difference from what is there now, it is not necessarily out of harmony with what is surrounding it, other than, there are homes there that are still single-family, some of which are in the HCZ, almost all of which are not. They're in the residential district. So then I think, next slide. Here we go. So this is like the main point. So I think it was missed. I think you asked about the economics of it. Why do you need to go that high? I mean, it's basically because there are certain constraints, and I did touch on them. So when you try to develop, you have to meet the financial performance standards of a bank, and we can't reduce the number of units, so we can't get financing, so then we can't construct, and we can't make this change to a residential use. As I said before, the residential uses simply, in order to maintain that harmony, are just much more expensive. For us to put up the storage facility and to have large equipment storage on the first floor, the building costs are substantially less. Because you don't have a lot of those buried costs, and you don't have a lot of those extraordinary building costs that you need to for a residential project. Because, for example, when you go and you build a self-storage facility, minimum parking, minimal sewer use, basically, what do you have for utilities? It's one system. It's just a totally different and much, much, much less costly project. Again, residential developments, it's not easy to be a residential landlord many times. I mean, it can be profitable, and the goal is to be profitable. I mean, that's their job, that's their business, is to maintain some sort of financial stability in their projects. But you do have to deal with vacancy rates and default rates in residential housing that you have to take into account, and so does the bank when you're trying to get your ratios, and you go to the bank and try to get financing. We eliminated the 2 units, and believe it or not, that was the most that we could possibly eliminate and still maintain that financial balance and keep it residential. That basically is, I think I tried to address all of the major comments that the board had, but if you have any additional questions, if you have any concerns, Chris is here, the Procopios are here, and I can definitely answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. I will, I'll save my questions to the end, so I'll start down there with you, Kitty.
So just as a member of the community, whenever there's talk about new housing, just in the community, I hear a lot of people question water restrictions. So can you comment at all about the impact this residential structure with this many units will have on, the town's ability to provide utilities and resources?
Of course. Nobody likes it. It won't have an impact. We will be within your guidelines, and we work with your DPW. So each project in every town has a certain withdrawal limit. And, everybody, I live in Middleton, so we always, it hasn't even stopped raining, and we have restrictions, right? Don't water outside. And literally, I have a vernal pool that is overflowing. So it's more about what the license says and how you control the actual use of water. And the most impactful way to do that is to eliminate irrigation that is outside. It's not necessarily the domestic use, because people now have the low flow facilities. They have all types of water saving devices. So it's not going to have an impact on your ability to service the rest of your community. We're not proposing to have, out on-site irrigation to be able to, overwater.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thanks, Katie. Corinne?
I just have a couple quick questions. What is the combined square footage of the two lots? I know they're still separate, and they won't be combined until you actually have a project in place. But what's the combined square footage of the two lots?
36,009 square feet. They're like 18,000 something and 17,000, so they combine to a little bit over 36,000.
Okay, and the revisions that you made to the plan, they didn't impact the square footage or the footprint of the building at all, did they?
No, they did not.
And you stated that you eliminated 1 2-bedroom and 1 studio. How does that impact the amount of parking spaces? Does it reduce it by 3?
So we do 1.5 per, but we have to go to the planning board. And I don't know if you remember, but in order to get that waiver from the planning board, I still have to show how I have that amount of parking. So if we have 30 units, we're still supposed to show the ability to have 60. So it did go down from 60, so we had 32 units, so it used to be 64. So we did go down.
So now you're down to 60 or 61?
60, because it's 30 units.
Okay. Okay, that's it, thank you.
Thank you.
But just to clarify on that, you're still showing 54, though.
We still
You
show
have
54.
the ability to go to 60,
But we have the ability to go to 60.
which would be the town requirement if you don't get a waiver.
Exactly. So what we have to show the planning board is that we, we reserve for the future, and we have to show it probably on the site plan, but we grass it so that you don't have to have more pavement than really is necessary.
Anything else, Corinne?
No, that's it, thank you.
Ken J.
So, did you mention that there's approximately 9.5 trips for a regular residence? And then you're going to have, each of these units you expect would be 4.5?
Multifamily, they don't say between studio 1s and 2s, they say multifamily units, so of a certain number, and it's 4.5 in the report.
4.5 per
average,
unit
yeah.
daily. So how did you, I don't quite get how you would get that from 5 trips less in your unit versus a household. Can you explain that, please?
Oh, why between a single family and multi? Why
Yeah.
there's a big difference? Because you don't have children is the biggest component. You typically will have, one person in a 1-bedroom, one person in a studio. So how many times does that person really leave the house? That's what the average reflects. So with a 2-bedroom, you would assume potentially that there would be 2 adults with 2 cars. But you don't know. It could be one person who has a home office. So multifamily just blends it, and that's the number they come up with when you look at the ITE charts. It's just a formula based on experience.
Okay. And what number of the house was those views of the Best Western and the other?
Okay, it's 43, right? Yeah, 43. I always get which
So
43.
where is that in location? I mean, so is that one of the?
That's the
that's
first
one of the
house.
houses.
Yeah,
that
one
are
of the,
gonna be-
it's
gotcha.
actually the house that Tim currently lives in. Mhm.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Ken. Ken Schultz.
Thank you. I think their proposal is basically the same, so I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attorney Mann, when I look at the dimensional requirements for a highway corridor zone, I see that the minimum lot area is 1 acre.
Yes.
So when you are showing us a storage facility or some other alternate approved in the highway corridor zone by right usage, you actually can't build that because you don't have enough area.
Well, you can, because you're protected under section 3.3.12, I believe it is. So when you have a legally existing non-conforming lot, which you have 2 of them, and you are entitled to combine, and then when you do your development, right, you simply are supposed to comply with all statutory setback requirements, but your bylaw actually protects legally existing non-conforming lots, in particular a combination. So it's that particular section that I quoted even in the memo. Mhm.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask
Sure, yeah,
Brian to
Brian, do you want to
clarify that?
chime in?
Let me just bring up the section. Can you give me a
Yeah,
minute?
Okay.
please, yep.
All right.
You have additional questions, Jeff, while
That's,
he's doing that?
Yeah, and this has happened several times before with other applicants where they come proposing to build a residential structure in a non-residential zone, and they'll say something like, oh, this is a fully conforming building because it's an industrial zone and we have 1 foot setbacks, or it's in a commercial zone and we have, but they're not asking for a commercial building. They're not asking for an industrial building. They're asking for a residential building. And in residential districts, there are dimensional requirements for density, for example, 7,500 square feet per unit. And you guys clearly have completely ignored those particular requirements, even though you're asking for a de facto residential building here. Could you address the density? Because according to me, 7,500 divided into 36,000 is 4.8 units.
It's 100% correct. When we had our meeting with the abutters prefer this to remain residential. The alternative is something that is in the wheelhouse of my client to construct. So this is not a residential district. I agree. I couldn't agree more. This is 100% an industrial district. The density requirements that surround us are not 7,500, nor have they ever been in the HCZ zone. I mean, I showed you the Sophie and I showed you the hotel. I don't know what the density is. I'm probably low, higher density than they are, but they most certainly are not 7,500 per unit in either event. And that was never a requirement because they're in the HCZ zone. And I realize how Sophie was approved. I don't know what section the hotel was approved under, but they don't meet it. So yes, we do not comply with the residential. We simply are willing to build a residential building, but if we do that, we need density to be able to get to the number. When we left here the other day, and after the meeting even, my client spoke with some of the neighbors, and their statements were, we really don't want to see an industrial building. We really want to see residential. And I said, okay, well, let's try and work together. Can I maybe reduce the height of this building more during site plan approval? Because I haven't gone through it with the architectural. Can I maybe get, 3 feet lower? I bet I can, because you can reduce. You have head space in between each floor, so I would bet I can get maybe 3 feet lower on the height of the building and go down, because in this zone, it's 55 feet. So I'm not looking for a variance. I'm not sitting here telling you that I have a project that needs a variance for height. It doesn't. Do I need a special permit and a finding to change the use? Yes. Is this use more cohesive and consonant with the surrounding homes, even Sophie? Yes. Residential is what you have. While there is the lab that is on Route 1, that's the only other, business use, but this area is all rezoned for that.
All right, though, Attorney Man, just a point of order here, though.
Of course.
So you mentioned special permit, but you're not
I
asking.
apologize, I meant finding. I am
You
so
are only
sorry.
asking for a finding.
Yes, I
Okay,
am. I
just want to make sure
apologize,
we're clear on
yes.
that.
I have no further questions until Brian can
Yeah.
pull a rabbit out of his hat.
Yeah, so we had discussed this during even one of our planning board meetings with the lot. I mean, we can,
So, sorry, it was 3.2 because there's a couple different
Oh,
ways you can cut this.
3 point, I had it written down and now, wait a second, you know what? I have it in my memo. 1 sec.
Because you understand, it's important that if you have to come back to the board for any kind of relief to build anything, that's a big deal.
Yeah, in my opinion, you do not with regard to the lot, and we did meet when we had our building meeting. We had actually specifically spoke about this particular issue, and I know we went back and forth in emails relative to this section, because you have a section that literally protects non-conforming lots, in not just single-family and two-family, but the section that falls below it. And I'm going to give me 1 second.
So I think what we're trying to clarify here is, that whether or not
They could
they would be
build-
back before us for a commercial or
Right.
industrial use.
Can they build in the highway corridor
By
zone
right.
by right without having 43,
And I think
560?
what's been presented to us is that as long as these lots are combined, the answer to that is yes.
So here, I'll bring it up here.
I'm sorry for dragging the public into
No.
this minutia,
No,
but
it's an important point.
Well, it's important
It's
information.
important. I couldn't agree more. So here we go. Oops.
Sorry.
I need to put on my glasses, unfortunately. Okay. Oh, maybe not. So if I may?
Sure, yes, if you can paraphrase, just
Yeah,
to
of
make
course.
it painless.
So basically, what this says is, okay, look, do you have a non-conform, and this is the section that pertains to not just single-family and two-family, because as you know, right, single-family and two-family homes are so protected as non-conforming uses. There's really a lot you can do, but when you have an industrial project, it's not necessarily always a protection. So in your bylaw, you actually protect. So you say any lot that doesn't comply with the provisions. So any lot that doesn't meet the single area, which is 43,560 square feet. If you do not meet it, you can't subdivide or otherwise change in shape. So essentially, what this particular provision says is what you cannot do, and what you cannot do is alter and or reduce. But then when you go down to the bottom, it says, but with respect to those provisions, if you can make it less conforming, so you're going to combine two lots, that is going to be something that is bringing it closer into compliance, and you reduce the amount of nonconformity, and then you can't ever revert. You can't go back. I think to your point,
Yeah,
you can't
yep.
go back to the 18 and 18. Now you're bound. So then it goes on to say, so when you have that lot and you have a nonconforming lot, you aren't precluded from seeking all of this other relief. You don't have to seek a relief for a special permit. There is no provision for that. You literally have a protected nonconformity under this particular section. You just can't reduce it.
Does that satisfy you, Jeff?
not exactly, but.
It's pretty common because you're going to, you're taking two non-conforming lots. Like, for example, quite frankly, if they really had wanted to, they own, and you, actually, Mr. Artie, you hit it on the nail on the head last time. You asked me, you said, are you going to try, why did you hold those two lots independently as two separate ownerships? Because quite frankly, I can. And when you do that, you actually have two legally existing non-conforming lots. So you are entitled to develop both of those to the extent you are able to put up buildings that meet all of the setbacks and all of the requirements. You have two legally existing non-conforming lots that are protected because they are not co-owned. And I thought actually that was the point that you were trying to
Well,
make.
they were separate entities, and
Yep.
I was wondering why
Yep.
that was the case.
And that was part, you would always maintain those as separate, because if they do choose to do something different with the properties, they're legally entitled to do that because they can't be forced combined, but we are forcing
But the
combined.
idea here is if they combine,
Yep.
you're bringing it more into
Yes.
conformity.
And that's an
Which is what we
intentional.
strive for.
It's what we
Right.
strive for, but.
Yes.
They still don't have the area, but apparently they don't need it,
No.
Correct.
which is
Which is maybe
terrible.
not the answer you like, but it's the accurate one, I believe.
But what that does
Do you
is-
agree with this sentiment, Brian?
Yeah, so it has to do with the fact that it's becoming more conforming with respect to area.
Correct.
A by right use is basically allowed if
Right.
it's
So
becoming
that's
more
what kicks them
conforming.
into a by right use in the highway corridor.
Mhm.
Okay, I think I've got
But
it.
I have to comply with,
But you'd have to combine them.
so the 25-foot front,
Right.
25-foot side.
But that keeps you from coming
Everything.
before
It's ju-
this
it-
board.
The protection is just based upon the lot size, so
Yes.
just
Got it.
as Attorney
Okay.
Mann saying, she would still have to apply for all that other
Everything
relief.
else had to meet.
Additional questions, Jeff?
I'm all set, thank you.
Thank you. Attorney Mann, just to recap a little here, can you give me the unit breakdown again as far as studios, one bedroom and two bedroom?
Oh, yeah. So we are going to have,
And that's now at the total count of 30.
yes, so we're going to have 11 two-bedroom units, 16 one-bedroom units, and 3 studio units. And, I did want to make the point of, we are required to have 12.5% affordable. So we do have a hearing or a meeting before the Affordable Housing Trust to get their input on what they want for the breakdown, because we have to give them 4 units, just so you know.
And when's that planned for?
It's on the 10th, so on Wednesday.
This week, okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess what I'm hearing is the studios, we're thinking, you know, obviously no kids, and as well as the one bedrooms, no kids. And the 11 units are the ones with potential for kids. Okay, and who would manage this? Please, hold your comments. I don't know why I have to keep saying that. I mean, this isn't high school, people. Could you tell me who would manage this building?
Sure. So initially, the Procopios actually will manage it, and then eventually, once it's fully leased and all of the issues are worked out, because when you first build a building, then they'll have a professional management company come in.
Okay. But that's obviously not identified at this point.
No.
And talk to me, I raised the point last time about the contractor yard kind of look that the property currently has. Was anything done to address that?
I don't know, was it, you moved the trailers out? So they have moved some of the trailers out. They really didn't know that they thought that they could before because it had been used that way. Not an excuse, they heard you, so they did move some of the trailers out.
So they're currently not on site? One is. And what is the building height again?
The building height currently is 48 feet, 2 inches.
Okay.
To the mean, you want to put up that slide? It's like slide 8.
All right, I don't think I have any additional questions.
Oh, it's 7, not 8.
I'm assuming you chose the upper end of Dayton Street as the inn because it's further off the highway? Is that the logic that was used there? Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, for the record, Chris Sparagi, civil engineer for the project, and that's exactly right. The further away from the off-ramp from Route 1 is a safer access point.
Okay. All right, and okay. I'll go back to the board. Is there any additional questions?
No.
Hearing none. And before I go out to the public, I just want to, first of all, I don't want to hear about any of the comments we've already heard. We've got it. We've heard about your concerns with traffic and water and schools we've talked about. Just keep in mind, again, we're here to try to keep this a working session. And I think, I'm hoping that you all understood what we just came to understand through our planning director and the attorney for the applicant is that a by right, and when I say by right, that means they don't come before the zoning board. Commercial or industrial use, I guess is a better way to say it, would be permitted on this site. So I guess I would just say tailor your comments based on what you want. Do you want something residential, or would you rather them go in a direction that brings us into industrial and in a constructive way? Because I can tell you just saying, no, we don't want anything is probably not where this is going to go. So it's your opportunity as the public to kind of ask the right questions, understand what it is the applicant's asking for, but also know that if they don't do some kind of residential use here, they're going to go in a direction that maybe you don't want and maybe you do. But that's where we're going to try to hear your comments and understand that. So with that said, I will put it out to the public, and again, show of hands, and I'll call upon you, and your questions will be directed to the chairman. Yes, right in the blue, yes. Identify yourself and your address and ask your questions. Over here, if you, well, okay. That's all right. No, you're halfway there. Go ahead. In interest of time.
My name is Joyce Comby, 73 Dayton Street. And I have to say that I have been against this. However, I did get the chance to speak with Tim, and he was kind enough to come down and present himself to a few of the neighbors. We do not want something that's going to be heavy construction. We do not want something that's going to be ugly. This does look presentable. no one likes change. As they said, we'd like to see the 2 residential homes. I realize they have the business and they have to make money, the same as everybody else. I would like to see if it can go down less than 48 feet. That would be great. I know Attorney Mann spoke to the fact that she may be able to bring it down a little more. I don't know if that means that 48 was the point that you could bring it to or not. So I guess I'm saying I don't want to see ugly. I'd rather see residential than ugly. And I think that was our point. So that's all I have to say. So
Yeah, and
I'm in favor
of not ugly.
of not ugly.
I guess, okay. Attorney Mann, could you address the height? Because I think my fellow ZBA member here, Ken Scholes, pointed out that, so this building has not physically changed in size or height.
No, it didn't, because we couldn't go down, but we just also didn't have the opportunity to work with the architect to get the height down. We tried. I did have a conversation with him, and I had a conversation also with Tim, and they both believe that there's headroom on the floor so that they can reduce the height by, what did you say, 3.5 feet? So about 3.5 more feet, which would bring it under, just under 45 feet, which is 10 feet shorter than what the.
But that's not what you're presenting to us tonight. You
I-
presented
well,
us
I'd be more than-
48, correct?
Because that's what's on the plan, but I
Okay.
think that we would be more than willing to.
So there's a possibility to reduce the height a little more?
I mean, I think it's a
Down
strong-
to 45 is what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Additional questions or comments from the public? And if so, yes, ma'am, in the front, and you can just go to that mic.
Good evening. My name is Maria Davis. I reside at 105 Dayton Street. And please forgive me, but I still don't understand why it has to be 32 units. I know clearly you're stating that to secure financing, but return on investment is return on investment. So if you spend $5 million less, you're still going to have the same return on investment. So is there any way, I respectfully ask, that this project could be scaled slightly smaller? Thank you.
Thank you. Attorney Mann, I think you've addressed that, but if you could just reiterate,
Sure. So
can this project be smaller?
And that's why we took out the 2 units. So I do understand it's not a one-for-one when you do construction. So when you're building one of these buildings, you have embedded costs. You have certain things you have to do. You have to put in 2 sets of staircases. You have to put in an elevator. You have to put in certain other attributes to make the building compliant. And those drive the costs. So believe it or not, as you add, this is construction. As you add the floors, that's where you have your money. And if you cut the floor off, you literally cut off the value and the ability to make money on the project. It is not a, okay, if I cut off the top, then I don't need to make the money on the top because that's how much. But as you go up, the price goes down.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments? Yeah, right behind the lady in the white, yeah, right there.
Mary Ellen Simpson at 147 Dayton Street. I thought about the lights when you were talking about lights the last time, just a little, and I thought,
Hope I didn't open a
maybe
can
that
of
will
worms.
slow the traffic down on Dayton Street.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I've given this a lot of thought, and I still feel, even though you've gone down 2 units, it's still a lot of volume of vehicles coming into a very small area in very close proximity to an interchange for Route 1. And I have still have a real concern about that. I personally feel this particular development is not safe, considering for the site. If it was down in another area where there was more room and stuff around, that would be a whole different thing. And I understand the commercial. And
What are your thoughts on that?
well, yes and no. You can have commercial that's not horrible and ugly. You can have office. You can have an 2-story office building or 1-story office building. It doesn't always have to be big, ugly construction stuff. And there's also buffer. I'm a big person of buffer. Put up some screening around between residents and the commercial area. And I just feel that, I understand they don't want to go any lower and all this other stuff, but I just have a concern with the volume of vehicles. Regardless of the study, you can't say that every car is going to leave every 5 minutes. You know, people going to work in the morning, you know, there could be people backed up in the parking lot trying to get out into that intersection, with or without lights. And the close proximity to Route 1, it's too much in a little tiny area. And that's my real concern, and that's why I feel it's not a safe development for that particular site. And if they have to go commercial, maybe we'll get lucky and it won't be too bad, you know? And I understand that, and some commercial isn't always ugly.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Comments? Yeah, right in the front, blue shirt.
My name's Ted Blake. I'm on the Town Finance Committee, and I live at 11A in the Drive, which is just off of Dayton Street. I emailed you guys last week, but I was unable to.
Yeah, I believe we read your letter.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So I just wanted to, there were a few things I wanted to add. The first thing, in listening in person tonight about how basically the highest density residential development in all of Danvers would be in harmony with our neighborhood is one of the most laughable things I've ever heard. Attorney Mann willfully misrepresented that SoFi is in conformance with Highway Corridor Zone. We sat here and listened to a prior presentation where one of the major selling points was our ability to avoid hostile 40Bs. The last large hostile 40B in Danvers was SoFi. So the idea that we're going to justify further high-density residential development in our neighborhood because of poor zoning decisions and the repercussions 10 or 20 years ago is laughable.
All right, well,
With
hold
respect-
on.
Okay.
Wasn't a poor zoning decision.
We weren't in
was-
compliance.
It
Okay.
wasn't a zoning decision.
I'm not saying
though,
it was
so-
your board.
Okay, so just
We-
make that clear.
We were not in compliance with affordable housing requirements,
Right,
therefore.
which allows for
Correct.
a developer to avoid zoning.
Correct, absolutely.
Okay, so just making a clarity
So
there.
the idea that a massive development should be, which was a hostile 40B, should be used as a rationale to build further high-density development in our neighborhood is, I
Yeah,
find
okay. No, I
massively
get your point.
objectionable.
Yep.
Secondly, the hotel across the way is Highway Corridor Zone. She did not mention all night long until somebody else, I think Mr. Sauer brought it up, that residential is not part of the Highway Corridor Zone permitted use. It's not.
I'm not sure I understand your point.
The point is, I sit on the Finance Committee 2 years ago. The MBTA tried to rezone the lot at that corner to Highway Corridor Zone. One of the things, what I'm trying to say is, by giving this permitted use in Highway Corridor Zone opens up a complete can of worms for Highway Corridor Zone all across our town. Every single lot that's struggling or not succeeding.
Well, hold on,
has-
I'll stop you there. So, we take every application on its merits that's presented before us. This does not set precedent for anything, We do not take what may or may happen at 43 and 45 Dayton Street and apply it to anything else. We've had several attempts, if you will, for other industrial highway corridor projects to come before us that have not passed. So I just want to make that distinction as well.
High density
Yeah,
residential.
matter of fact,
Good. I'm glad they
several of
haven't.
them.
No, I'm glad they haven't. The town has made a big effort to rezone downtown and encourage high density development there. Dayton Street is a cow path with asphalt on it. For us to drop a 30-unit high density development just out of the sky onto that corner, it defies logic. And I don't know how we could possibly approve it. With respect to the question Mr. Sauer asked, it was a point I was going to make as well. I would suggest, given Attorney Mann's loose interpretation of history with respect to SoFi and some of the other properties and the reason why they're there, I don't think it's necessarily advisable for the board to take her word for it and allow her to interpret Massachusetts statute. I think you guys ought to get further counsel on that, rather than her say that it's permitted by right. Lastly, I would much rather have them try and rezone it, even if they are allowed to do it by right without the 1 acre lot.
You'd prefer an
I'd much
industrial
prefer,
use.
go right ahead.
Yeah.
If, I don't love highway corridor zone, but it's not perfect, but let's not start doing spot rezoning all over town and dropping huge apartment buildings everywhere.
Very good. Thank you. Additional comments? Yes.
Charlene Potter, 56 Dayton Street. I had a couple of questions. One of the members of the board had a question about a pine tree that's located
Yeah,
to the back.
there's a couple of large trees.
Yeah, there's a really big pine tree. I'm pretty sure that tree is on the property at 45. Is that correct?
That is incorrect, to my understanding.
It's
Yeah,
on.
it's not on their lot.
It's on their side of the fence.
I think they're showing two large trees to the right side of number 43.
No, to the between 45 and
Yeah,
47.
let them respond, hold on.
Sure.
Go ahead.
For the record, Mr. Chairman, I've highlighted the trees that you asked about last time.
Yes.
And so along the western property line,
And that would be, just for clarification, 45 Dayton.
that's right.
Yep.
To the left of the plan that you're looking at up here that's colored up, and you can see I colored those
Yeah,
trees.
yep.
Those two trees are not on our property.
Got it.
So they're just over the other side.
So that big pine tree is not on the property at 45?
That is correct.
Okay, because it looks like it is from the street.
Okay, next
All right,
question.
I just wanted to, I wanted to make sure that tree stayed. Okay, thank you for relocating the dumpster. That was one of my questions. Sidewalk. I think the plan shows your sidewalk coming out one door of the building and going across the front of your property and back to the another door of your building. So we, right? Is that, I mean,
Yeah.
is that right? So my question is, can you include a little jog that connects it to your driveway so that people from the rest of the neighborhood can go right across the driveway, your sidewalk, and your driveway to the other part of the sidewalk?
So you're looking for some kind of connection?
Yeah, just for the rest of the
From your
neighborhood.
lot, from the other residential lots?
Just across, not for you to go all the way across, but just across. It looks like there's grass between the sidewalk that comes out from your building and goes in front. Just asking you to connect.
That's a sidewalk across the front.
And we have the sidewalk connected.
Attorney Mann, if you could bring that mic over with you so we can be heard.
Yep.
Yeah, do you want to- yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's okay. So just to answer your question, across the front of the property, of the proposal that you see on the screen, we're proposing a new sidewalk that's going to go from driveway to driveway. If I'm hearing you correctly through you, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
there's a request to extend the sidewalk across those little short pieces on the far
Yeah, I
side of
think
each
on the
driveway.
left and right hand. Into the microphone, ma'am, please.
Sorry. Not on the far side of the driveway because there's nothing to connect to. I just wanted it to go across the grass.
Well, they're already showing a sidewalk across their front
Okay,
property.
the other drawing didn't show that. That was what I was asking you about.
Okay, so
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, through you, it's out in the state highway, so it might be a little bit difficult
you
to
have to
see.
get Mass DOT approval.
That as well. But that's where we show the sidewalk, right along the curb line, if you will.
Okay.
Okay, that's a change. And I'm still not happy with 30. I'd like you to go lower. You're saying 4.5 vehicle trips per day times 30 apartments, that's 135 vehicle trips per day, minimum. I'm thinking it's probably going to be more than that. I was one of the neighbors that had a visit from Tim, and we talked about this, and we talked about the density, and I said, if you could maybe change some of the one-bedrooms to two-bedrooms, you'll get more money from a two-bedroom than you will for a one-bedroom, but you'll have less cars. And then we talked about how many trips you make a day to going to work and to school and to the gym. And so now you've eliminated those trips to the gym by putting a gym in the building, so good for you. I'm happy about that. But if we could get down below 30, I would appreciate that. Also, if you can cut out the 3 more feet in the building, it's going to cost you less in your building materials, too. So bingo there.
And you're in favor of a residential use or a commercial industrial
I
use?
do not want to, commercial industrial opens it up to just so much. I don't want to see that.
So you would rather see something residential?
Yes, I would.
Very good.
I thought that the previous presenter did a wonderful job of doing what the neighborhood wanted. I don't think that that is all possible here, but any contingencies that can be made that would be great. Sophie, I can't remember now what it was called when it first went in. That was a disaster because we didn't have the affordable housing, so they just, ran all over us. And we have to remember that you don't always get what you're looking for. You have to follow all of this through to planning to make sure that the plans don't change, because the buildings at Sophie do not look anything like they were first presented. And also the hotel that's there, that was a Ramada Inn back in the 70s. And before that, I think it was a boarding house. So it's kind of been the use for that piece of property for a long time. I've been there 43 years, and I've seen a lot of change. And a lot of people that are in this room, your houses weren't there when I moved in. It was a little street with cows grazing down the street, corn being grown, a greenhouse, and chicken coops, and a 13.75 acre working farm across the street. So there's been a lot of changes, but I would rather see residential in that spot than a giant metal warehouse of some sort.
Okay, very good, thank you. And again, I'll say this, and I know one of the neighbors stood up talking about Sophie, and we're having talks about, is it Best Western? I don't even know what it is. Best Western. In fairness to the applicant, we're not here to debate those projects. Hold on. Guys, come on, we're here to work together. We're your neighbors. Those projects did not come before this board, and we're not here to talk about the merits or the density of those projects. Do they impact? Are they part of the neighborhood? Absolutely, yes. And we do consider that as part of what's going on in this whole area. And that's, if you remember, as one of the neighbors brought up, I did talk about, maybe traffic lights and things of this nature. I do think it's a very poor layout, and that's no one's fault more than you could point to any town in New England and how it was laid out back in the day. So I just want to make clear that although we don't have exact density numbers on either of those projects, we're here to discuss the merits of 43 and 45 Dayton Street. So I just want to make that point. Yeah, go ahead, come on up.
Good evening. My name is Sally Kearns. I live at 208 Center Street, which is parallel. If I went through a bunch of backyards, I'd get over to Dayton Street. I'm also our state representative, and I'm wondering if there have been conversations with MassDOT specifically about the relationship between existing traffic, the on-ramp, the off-ramp, the traffic coming down Dayton. We all drive this intersection 100 times a week. Have you had conversations with, I guess I'm asking through you,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, have there been discussions with MassDOT?
Yeah, Attorney Mann, you want to respond to that? Sure. And I think it's a good point because of what I've seen firsthand and what's been discussed not only with neighbors, but I think site visits. It's not a great area for anything over there,
terrible.
quite frankly. Yeah.
It's terrible.
So we have not.
No discussions with Mass DOT
No,
currently.
not at this time. If the project is approved, then MassDOT will open up a
And
file.
just clarification, I'm pretty sure MassDOT won't even entertain a discussion until you get through local zoning.
Well, it's
It's the way I understand the process, and I'll go to you, Brian, on that.
Generally, yeah.
Generally, that is the case. So it would be great to get their input ahead of time, but they're basically saying, don't talk to us until you've got the consent of your local zoning board.
Right, except that, remember, and I think Ted Blake mentioned it, MassDOT came to the town seeking a rezoning of a off-ramp parcel, kind of opposite the original Watson farm.
And unfortunately, we don't have any info on that before us. So we're not privy to anything that they may have come to the town on, unless Brian has any info. No. And I'm not discrediting what you're saying. I'm just saying we don't know about it.
We we were on the finance committee at the time.
So that
when
was
it-
something that
when it came
occurred,
to us.
sounds like.
And it was-
And do we know the result of that?
We do not, which is one of the reasons I was wondering if you had
Maybe.
conversations with MassDOT. So I think that's important context. I understand as a chair,
It's a
you are
procedural step
trying
that-
so hard to kind of
Yeah.
keep this manageable.
path.
I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I also believe that the historical context around some of these traffic zoning state interaction, because the state will have to give you permission, correct, for your curb cuts?
Go ahead.
So we require an access permit. What we probably will do, quite frankly, is if we get the finding, then we'll go to MassDOT with a very detailed explanation of what we want to do, get the input, and then try and at least foresee some of the changes and some of the impacts that they want to see mitigated, if you will, on a site plan. It's such a small project for them. I don't know what they would want to do. I don't know how they would handle it, because they don't. MassDOT takes a very focused look, and when they were asking you to do something before, that's because the town has control over a lot of property. We don't have control over anything. So we're going to go in, we're going to show them what our project is, and hopefully they'll give us some, response. But you have to remember, we are a project that is going to have literally no exacerbating impact on a situation that exists currently. It is a very, very, very small project in comparison to what your problems are in the site. And that's something we work with MassDOT on.
Does that answer it for you?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would request, as a neighbor now, as a resident, I would like, and I guess maybe this is your bailiwick, I would like the board to ask MassDOT for data on how many accidents occur. There's probably many more near accidents, but I would like to know how many accidents occur in that spot.
Dayton Center Street
Armory.
off-ramps.
Dayton Armory
On-ramps.
off-ramps.
It's
yeah.
part of our traffic. But we actually have that. When you do the we did a full traffic study. I mean, we did a full traffic study of the entire intersection and
Is that
area.
something you can pull up and
Oh, yeah,
highlight
Chris
for
is
us?
going to answer
Well,
that question
would that
right now.
include crash
Well,
data?
through me,
does.
please.
Great. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
That would be great. I would love to know that. And then putting on my other hat as state rep. if I
Wearing
can
more
be
hats than
useful
us up here.
Yeah, if I can be, I sat in many hours of hearings
Yeah.
today, so I do appreciate where you all are sitting right now. But if I can be helpful with
Sure.
reaching MassDOT, but I really would love to know, are we entertaining something that's going to exacerbate an already bad design?
Well, I would have thought, again, without an answer from the applicant yet, I would have thought the traffic study would have highlighted or red flagged something. But again, I'm not a big fan of traffic studies. I'll come right out and say it, because I really think it's pie in the sky a lot of times. But entertain me, and maybe we can answer this question.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, the traffic study that was prepared reached out to Mass DOT for collision and crash records for the area. There's a few things that traffic engineers do. They take a look at the average crash information for the entire state, and then the specific district. We're in District 4. They also reached out to the Danvers Police Department for their crash records, and they informed them that they should reach out to Mass DOT to get their records. So what they found is that there's an average of 1.4 crashes per year, and that's the latest 5 years of data from Mass DOT. And when we talk about the last 5 years of data, the traffic engineers have been going back in time before COVID, looking at crash data, because they're, skewed.
And it was higher or
It was-
lower?
Well, back 2015 to 2019 is the 5-year period that they went back and looked at crash records, because after that, the numbers are much lower.
Okay, so that's the 1.4 you speak of?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's pre-COVID, I like to say.
That's right. And the average of those crashes yielded a crash rate of 0.43 crashes per million entering vehicles. That's the unit that they use to describe.
Well, that sounds awfully low to me, but
So
the
let's
data
compare-
doesn't lie,
let's
right?
let's compare that to the statewide average, which is 0.57. So
Okay.
we're below the state average, we're below.
And this was for District 4, but it literally is tagging this off and on-ramp?
That's correct.
It is, okay.
That's correct. So this is the area
And
that
that's just reported accidents, though. So if there were a fender bender there and the two drivers decided to drive off, you don't have data on that, correct?
not unless it was reported either
Right,
to
it had to be
MassDOT or the
reported,
police
okay.
department.
Understood. Okay, again, in interest of time, comments that really center around between residential versus industrial, and new questions not around traffic or anything that's already been discussed tonight. So, yeah, right in the red, or orange, if my eyes doing me justice. Hello.
Hello, good night. Good night.
Don't say that, we'll all leave.
No, sorry.
Please identify yourself.
My name is Kathy Arno, and I live at 75 Dayton Street. And just to confirm about the traffic accident, I believe there was one Thursday night around 8:30, 9 o'clock.
So the average is already going up,
So,
okay.
so good news for all of us. This year we're good, but poor.
Yep.
poor
Again, no
Sucker.
more traffic, I
Yep.
think we got it.
So my question was in regards to parking. I know you had less than the 60 spots and that they could go ahead for the.
So they did that last
variance.
time, they show 54 spots on their lot with the ability to go to 60 if the planning board asks them to. They're gonna ask for a waiver
Yep.
to not have to put 60,
Okay.
but they have that ability.
Okay, and so then, from what I remember, the ones that they were going to add were the green space. So did that take into consideration the fire truck going in and not being able to go around the back of the
Well, so from what they've presented to us, the fire truck has no issues. It can go around the lot as it's laid out currently.
But even if they add the extra, if they have to
Even if
add-
they add the additional 6 spots, if the planning board requires, that will not, I'm answering for you, but will not impact the fire truck's route.
Mhm.
So no impact to the fire truck.
Okay, and so if it went commercial, what is the,
Allowed uses?
well, no, what is the policy on using Dayton Street as an access road? I know I see like signs that say like no trucks or no vehicles over a certain amount of, so they just stay at the end of Dayton Street?
I honestly don't know. I could go out to our planning director on that one, Brian.
State highway doesn't have a weight limit.
Well, hold on,
Yeah,
go
I
ahead.
mean, I don't think that you're talking about putting.
Restricting like no truck
So you can't,
access?
so when the commercial.
So trucks can't go down Dayton Street?
Correct. They
Yeah.
can't go down
So
Dayton Street to go to Dunkin' Donuts and get a coffee.
Right, so that restriction, as far as I know, couldn't be put on arbitrarily.
I don't think that's something that because the select board would have to do that in terms of put a type of reverse of flow of on
Yeah, I
the
think that
street.
would be select board, town meeting.
I don't think it would be
Is it
town meeting,
difficult?
but
I mean, like,
I
would
just
it-
don't think it would probably meet the merits of that. I mean, why that street and not other streets, for example?
So, the answer is,
Okay.
it's unlikely there would be a truck restriction,
Okay,
meaning trucks would be able to go down Dayton Street, as they can right now.
okay. And so as far as putting a residential building, I'm against it. I think the Dayton Street has shouldered enough of the Danvers development by actually having the hotel, by having SoFi, by having the Danvers State Hospital. Again, it's a country road, and honestly, the chances of no kids living in an apartment building blows my mind, but I don't know, maybe this Danvers is doing something to the water. I don't know.
There is no water.
Yeah, that, but I think it would be less, more safe for the residents that are already there.
You're saying you would not prefer residential or would?
No, I wouldn't, as presented, no, I'm not for it.
Not in favor of?
No, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yes. New comments, please.
Mitch Abbott-Tesser from 4 Putnam Lane. I had a few questions about the building, possibly some ideas. How many under-building parking spots are there right now?
They detailed that already. I think it's 21. Yep.
21. So this is a follow-up question to that. How tall would the building be if you removed those under-building parking spots, dropping the height of the building? You have the dimensions how tall the building is. You must have some figures for...
But they can't just arbitrarily drop the spots. That would mean they'd have to put them above ground, and they
Well,
don't have
I
the
understand.
space for that.
I'm just saying, under-building parking, sure, you're gonna have to have a certain elevation to fit the cars in and whatnot. But if there was a way to remove the under-builder parking, that would be one possible avenue for dropping the height of the
I'll let
building.
Attorney Mann respond, or the engineer.
I mean, I don't really understand. He's trying
Well,
to
I think
reduce
the
it by
question he's
taking
saying
it
is
away.
if you removed, and I'm paraphrasing, the underground parking, can the building sink or be lower?
I'd have to find 21 parking
Yeah.
spaces
I
outside,
think-
which means I create more pavement. So, and I need a basement because I'm having an elevator, right? So I have to have a shaft that's going to go
Yep.
in and go up, and you have to have a certain, I think it's 3 feet below the floor that it's going to be stopping at. We have to have a fully accessible, all floors need to be fully accessible, including the basement area. So no,
Yeah.
it isn't, I'm sorry, it just can't work.
Again, that's not what they're
Yeah.
presenting, so it's,
Okay, you said you have to do that. What other designs were there for other style buildings? I know Danvers has some other condominium styles where there's 2 or 3 units on certain properties. I know at the location next to the Rebecca Nurse House, they had proposed a 27-unit, actually, I believe it was 2 or 3 buildings, there were 27 units, and they refused that, and they said they could shrink it down to 9. Where is the profit margin in shrinking it down to something that does fit more with the neighborhood?
Well, I think,
Smaller
I mean,
homes or something like
again,
that?
she's already answered that. They're at where they can be, is
Well,
according to
for
them.
this proposed project, of course, but you and I both know there are always other options. This is the most bang for
Well,
the buck
I
for
think
them.
this is this is their biggest and best offer. So it's either this, or they're gonna go in another direction. Is what she's presented tonight.
I just hope that the town will do the right thing and that the citizens will do the right thing and the developer will
Yeah.
think about other options. Thank you.
Thanks. I've already heard from you. Let me just get some fresh comments. Back there on the left.
Thank you. I'm Tom Maniscalco, 21 Anna Drive. I'm against this residential apartment building. It's too much density, and the option was either take this or we can come back with something commercial. Come back with something commercial, I think it'd be less impact on the neighborhood in its entirety.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bradstreet.
Again, Bill Bradstreet, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. The only comment I can make, if the cost of the project is an issue for the developers or the bank, it's not an issue for the town. If it can't be profitable for the developer, just don't do the project.
Thank you. Yeah, in the way back.
Good evening, Mr. Chamber and members of the board. My name is Marisol, 54 Dayton Street. I just want to make 3 small comments. First one, I came to Dayton Street as a single woman, got married, bought a house, now have a baby. You know what I mean by that. Second one, visually, I'm going to be super impacted. Team can see Southside and the hotel. Now I will be seeing Southside, the hotel, and your building, respectfully. Visually, it's not something that I want to see that tall, so I am against that project.
Against the residential. Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay, yep.
I'm sorry, Charlene Potter, 56 Dayton Street again. I just have a question about the height. When you're talking about the height, you're talking, that piece of property goes downhill. So you're talking about the median height. What's the height of the building at the street level, at the front of the building? How high is it?
So
I think we've detailed
lower
this.
than
It's 48 feet to the top.
No.
It's 48 feet to the mean, so you measure, you want to bring up slide 7?
Because I'm not going to look at it from the backyard. I'm going to look at it from the street.
6 feet lower than that.
It's 6 feet lower, yeah. Sorry. So here is the, here's the building, here's the rear. This is the front, it's 48, but if you see the mean is measured from here.
Can't hear her.
All right. Yeah.
Oh, I did it again. Chris, what?
All right, Harold, let me get
I'm
it
right
back.
with the back and front. Yeah, it's about 6 feet lower than that.
So it's 42 feet at the street.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
I am not good with mics. And then,
okay.
if I may too.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just in response to the concern about the height of the building, I just need to stress the fact that buildings in this district that are permitted by right can be 55 feet tall. This building will be limited, and if we can reduce the height, we're going to reduce it to about 45 feet. So this does represent a lower profile than what other buildings can be built on this site. I just want to make it clear. Because when I heard something, Mr. Chair, when somebody was saying about, wanting to see one and what the impact would be, I just want to make sure they understand that the other building would be a taller building.
Thank you. All right, at this point, I'm going to close the public hearing, and I'm going to ask the board if there's any additional questions out of any of our members. Seeing or hearing none, I will
I
also,
just
go
have
ahead,
one
Ken.
quick-
Yep.
Just a clarification, so with the, from the street, it would be about 39 feet then, right? If you drop it to 45, is that what you're saying?
Right? Yep.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, yes.
Thanks.
Okay. Anything else? Katie, Karine?
No,
You all
thank
good
you.
down there? Okay, and again, thanks to the public for all your input. It definitely helps us to understand what's happening in your neighborhood. And again, I guess what I'll do, this has happened in the past, just a show of hands, who would rather see residential and who would rather see commercial? Okay, very good. All right, Katie, we will deliberate and we will start down there with you.
So I think, unlike the majority of people here and maybe the majority of people in our town, but I am in favor of additional housing. I think that as a society where there are a lot of people that are unhoused and underhoused, and if we can, as a community, welcome people, especially in multifamily buildings like this, I think that's a good thing. I think that the last thing that anybody wants to see is another self-storage facility. But I do think this is a bad location for this kind of structure and this kind of building. I don't live in that neighborhood, but nearby, and I do drive around there pretty often, getting onto the highway, getting onto Route 1, and I think I can see where the neighbors are coming from with this, that it just seems like it would cause more problems than it would be worth. So I'd be a no.
You're a no. Thank you. Karine?
I was a little surprised when we got the revisions and there were only 2 units and the footprint is still the same. I'm not 100% a no, I'm just a no right now. I think as one of the neighbors mentioned, there are different ways that you can configure the apartment, so maybe you would have the same amount of residents living there maybe, but have less housing, so maybe more 2 bedrooms, maybe less studios, I don't know. But I really think that, that the project needs to be scaled back a little bit. And if you scale it back, it means less parking spaces and less traffic, maybe, you know, less concerns with regard to congestion and density. And again, I just think it's too big the way it is now.
Thank you, Corinne. Ken?
I would approve this with a condition on the taking the extra 3 feet off, because I think there is a need for residential housing, and there's a good mixture of studio, 1 and 2 bedrooms, and I think a 55-foot storage unit or something else, or a steel warehouse would be more unsightful, wouldn't be pleasing to the eye at all. So I would approve this with the condition.
Thank you, Ken. Ken Scholes.
Thank you. I was a no on this before. I think this is the same exact proposal, to be honest with you, but I'm a no again. I go along with the woman who spoke. I don't want ugly. I don't want ugly either. I don't want to see a 55-foot-high building when I come to the end of Armory Road. But, I don't know, it's almost like be careful what you wish for. So if you don't vote in the residential, they could by right do that. I mean, you hate to have it like a threat or something, but that's the reality of it. But I'm a no for this project.
Thank you, Ken. And Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think it's too much in a terrible spot, so I'm a no.
Thank you. And Attorney Mann, I do see some efforts were made to reduce this, but it didn't reduce the footprint. And I agree with some of the neighbors' sentiment around the traffic and my fellow board members. I think this is, it really is a tough site to put something like this. Like Corinne, though, I could entertain something smaller, and I know you're kind of giving us what I think is the best layout you have right now from a, sustainability to be able to do the project. I get that part of it. So, but for that reason, the size of it is just, it's too dense for that location. Would I prefer residential versus industrial, commercial? Yes, I would. So that's where it's at. You don't have the votes, and what would you like to do?
So I definitely appreciate the feedback, and I understand the desire to make, less units, create alternates. But we really did put paper to pencil, and it just doesn't work, and our alternative is truly to go the other route. It just doesn't make sense, and I appreciate the comments of the board, I appreciate the comments of the abutters, but at this point,
No continuance here. You'd just like to withdraw without prejudice?
we would.
Very good. Could I get a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we withdraw this application without prejudice.
I'll second.
I got a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. And a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
I will second that.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. And